Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good morning. This is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. There is no access from the A725 northbound to Whistleberry Road due to planned maintenance. Motorists should use signed diversion routes and prepare for extended travel times. On the M4 eastbound at junction 43, the on-slip road is closed due to ongoing roadworks, so diversions are in place. In Bury, a vehicle crossing the central reservation on the M66 southbound between the A56 and junction 1 causes full lane closures. And on the trains, expect disruptions on the Elizabeth line in the Shenfield area, plus issues on Greater Anglia routes between Colchester and Chelmsford. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Britain's Newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
Now, the governing body of tennis, which is the Lawn Tennis Association, has been accused of effectively breaking the law.
Yes, that's after reports that they encouraged transgender people to participate in women's tournaments. Well, we're now joined by the former Olympic swimmer Sharon Davies to discuss this. Sharon, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Now, just bring us up to date, because the LTA, I think in January, made what could have been seen as quite a positive decision to stop trans players, trans women, so biological men, from competing against women in the elite game. But tell us what's different about the amateur game.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really important that we do use the correct language, because they're not banning anyone. They're just stopping biological males from competing against biological females. It's really that simple. And what's very frustrating is that basically they're saying, if you're really good, we're going to give you fair and safe sport. If you're not quite so good, we're not going to give you fair and safe sport. I mean, what a ludicrous situation that we're actually in. And as you say, I mean, it's been 100 days now since the Supreme Court ruling. It made it absolutely clear that a women's event means that it's a women's event only if it has biological females in it. If it has any form of man in it, no matter how they got to call themselves, what they want to wear, then it's a mixed sex event. So, you know, they are encouraging local clubs, you know, to not actually follow the law, to not give fair sport to pathways, to recreational, to juniors. You know, these people now are just expected to have unfair sport. And how do we get the elites if we don't make sure that the way forward and the way through is fair? And this is not just tennis. You know, golf is bad too. We still have 30 sports in the UK that don't protect the female category, including things like taekwondo, would you believe, and gymnastics.
GB News, the People's Channel.
It's 9:30 a.m. on Monday, the 18th of August, live across the United Kingdom. This is Britain's Newsroom with me, Alex Armstrong, and Miriam Cates.
Good morning. Well, Europe's leaders fly to Washington to show support for Ukraine and its president as the country's future hangs in the balance. Our Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, will be among those joining Zelensky as he meets Donald Trump. Their presence is intended to stop a repeat of his first trip to the White House.
You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country. That's back to you. Far more than a lot of people said they should have.
And is it last orders for our boozers? More than 200 pubs permanently shut in the last 6 months after rising taxes and the cost of labour.
Well, yes, the name's Bond, James Bond, but does 007 have to be a man? Well, Pierce Brosnan joins Helen Mirren's calls for a male actor to play the super spy.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a second,
Absolutely.
And Delulu, Skibbity and Tradwife. Do any of these words make any sense to you? Actually, they do to me. They are the newest additions to the Cambridge Dictionary, and we'll be getting to the bottom of what they actually mean.
Now, I don't know about you, Alex, but I am a massive fan of the James Bond series. I have seen all. Who do you think has been the best Bond?
Well, I got brought up with Pierce Brosnan.
Yeah.
He was a brilliant GoldenEye. We still had that cheesiness about it.
It was very cheesy. I prefer Daniel Craig, but it's got to be a man, hasn't it? I mean, I'm sure it's a joke, the idea that it's going to be a woman next, but
they'll do anything to keep James Bond alive, and also to get people talking about it. I think that's what we talk about. Is there going to be a black James Bond? Is there going to be a mixed race James Bond? Who knows? Because I think they're desperate to keep this franchise alive.
Well, that's it. Is there going to be another James Bond? Because I thought he died at the end of the last movie. I mean, how are they going to resurrect him?
They literally killed him off, didn't they?
You know, Hollywood can do anything. Anyway, let us know what you think. Suggest who you think would be the next James Bond. gbnews.com/your say. But first of all, your 60-second news update with Sophia Hill.
Very good morning. These are your latest headlines just after 9:30. So Keir Starmer is in Washington today with European leaders urging President Trump not to bow to Vladimir Putin's demands in peace talks. It follows Russia's apparent success at last week's Alaska summit, which reportedly led to President Trump considering having Ukraine give up regions in return for a ceasefire. 8 pubs a week shut for good in the first half of this year. Figures show that 209 pubs were demolished or converted by June as rising taxes, higher wages and business rates hit the industry hard. Chancellor Rachel Reeves is preparing to roll back environmental protections to speed up infrastructure projects. She insists these changes are vital and continues her criticism of bats and newts as economic obstacles. And the average asking price for a home has dropped by more than £10,000 this summer. That's according to Rightmove. Prices fell nearly £5,000 in August alone, bringing the average to £368,740. More than 6,000 new words have been added to the Cambridge Dictionary, including slang like skibbity, delulu and tradwife. Editors are saying that social media is driving much of the new changes. Those are the headlines for now. More news at the top of the hour.
Tune into GB News Radio wherever you are, online, on DAB digital radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Hello and welcome. This is Britain's Newsroom live across the United Kingdom on GB News with me, Alex Armstrong, and of course Miriam Cates.
Now, the big news this morning, Sir Keir Starmer and other European leaders are travelling to Washington to urge President Trump to not give in to Vladimir Putin's demand in the Ukraine-Russia peace talks.
Yeah, this comes after Russia's apparent success at last week's Alaska summit, which reportedly led to President Trump considering having Ukraine give up regions in return for peace.
Well, the support from other leaders will also aim to stop the Ukrainian president from having a confrontation like the last time he was in the Oval Office.
Gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country, that's backed you far more than a lot of people said they should have.
So can Sir Keir Starmer and other political leaders sway the peace talks, or will Putin still get his way? Well, we're joined now by GB News Home and Security Editor Mark White. Mark, I mean, look, OK, I think that we're being really pessimistic about this Alaska deal. I think that actually, you know, you got the liberal media going up in arms that Putin was greeted with respect, which I think is what you should do if you're trying to get a peace deal. But is it right to suggest that perhaps Trump could be at least sort of swept aside by Putin's demands?
Well, I don't know if he'll be swept aside. I think you're right to say that, you know, he clearly made Vladimir Putin feel welcome. We've had more than 3 years under Joe Biden of nothing, of just complete stalemate, of condemnation from the United States, European and other allies of Ukraine. And all the while, the battle raged on and nothing was done. At least under President Trump, you've got movement to try to bring the sides again together. How difficult that might be for both sides, and certainly for Ukraine, if clearly at the end of the day, it's going to involve giving land over to Russia. I mean, they talk of a swap. There's no swap here. It's effectively giving away territory that Russia has already largely captured. If Ukraine can live with that, given certain security guarantees, then there could be a way forward. It was interesting to listen to Prime Minister Starmer and other European leaders say there can be no deal without Ukraine. Well, of course, there can be no deal without Ukraine. They're one of the main protagonists. It's just a nonsense. It doesn't actually mean anything, that language. What Ukraine needs to hear from Messrs Starmer and others is that if you find it too unpalatable to give this land back, we will continue to support your efforts to prosecute this war against Russia as difficult and perhaps, fruitless and futile as that might be.
And yet Ukrainian public support for that is actually waning. I think 70% of Ukrainians now support a negotiated peace. The appetite for endless war is going. But what about Trump's demands ahead of the meeting with Putin last week? He said that if there wasn't a ceasefire, he'd be deeply unhappy. He said if there wasn't a ceasefire, he was going to impose sanctions on Putin, on countries that trade with Putin. All that's gone out the window with Steve Witkoff saying that, well, actually, if we now threaten sanctions, we'll lose Russia from the table. I mean, has he capitulated already?
Well, it certainly seems that he's altered his position. That's self-evident from what he said going into those negotiations. But, the realist there is clearly of a mind that you have to, if you want to keep any prospect of any kind of settlement still alive, you've got to kind of accept that you can't necessarily follow through with the ceasefire demand at the moment, and actually you've got to go for a more negotiated settlement that will bring peace in the end, the hope is. But let's see how it goes. It will be interesting to see just... I can't wait to see if there is a news conference with President Trump and Zelensky after.
So good.
Well, you would like to think that Vladimir Zelensky has learned some key lessons and taken some advice. When you deal with President Trump, you can't nip back as he was doing, and you can get it. He's lived and breathed this war. You can understand how he finds it very difficult to accept the things that President Trump was saying. But at the end of the day, it's Donald Trump. It's a powerful individual. You just got to suck it up in the same way as other world leaders do. Just keep your thoughts to yourself, and then you can tell the world afterwards.
Mark, what about these European leaders all flying out as well, right? I mean, I don't know who's not invited at this point. Are these lot will show up to an envelope opening, if you ask me? Prime Minister Keir Starmer has been away, I think, more than any Prime Minister in modern history in the last century, which would say a lot, considering Churchill was flying all over the place. So, but why are they there? I mean, why are they there? This is the big question everyone's asking. Is it really critical to have the voice of Sir Keir Starmer saying, well, yes, we agree that there should be peace talks? They're just rattling off PR lines, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, the reason they're there, pure and simple, is just to show Zelensky some support at a time when he clearly feels that a lot is being agreed on and decided behind his, or at least at the moment anyway, out of his control, and he is going to be presented with a fait accompli at the end of the day. So having those European leaders, NATO and the EU president there as well, is to say to President Zelensky, look, whatever you decide is whatever you decide. We'll be there and we'll have your back. Will they actually have their back at the end of the day, though, is the issue.
Well, the one significant shift that Putin seemed to make was to accept this idea of an Article 5 style guarantee from the West. In other words, that Ukraine could have the security guarantee of America and other European countries to say that they would push back if Putin tried again. I mean, if he really has conceded that, that is quite a significant concession.
I think you're right. That is a significant concession on Russia's part, it would seem, because that would involve a security guarantee, you would imagine, some kind of air support over Ukraine. The British and various other allies have already said that there will be a coalition of the willing sending troops in on the ground to Ukraine. Now, that doesn't mean troops right up against the front line in the hot zones, but it will mean, around the key cities, guarding sort of critical national infrastructure, doing some of the training that takes place in the UK and other nations of Ukrainian recruits, doing that in country now. So that kind of development, which gives a certain amount of reassurance there. It seems that Vladimir Putin, from what Steve Witkoff, the special envoy to Donald Trump, has been saying, has conceded that. So at least that's positive in terms of some of what appears to be a concession from Russia.
Yeah, and just briefly, Mark, I mean, President Trump has, and his administration really slammed Emmanuel Macron as interfering with things like Palestine, saying that they're going to recognise it as a state, saying they're making things worse. Is there a sense by the Americans, at least, that actually European leaders there are just there for PR and they are not going to be helping achieve anything with these peace talks whatsoever?
Well, I'm not sure. I think the US want the Europeans to get more involved.
Okay.
I think they're sick of actually having to sort of shell out billions and billions of dollars. They want the Europeans to actually own the issue to a greater extent than they do now. I think key to this, very briefly, will be if President Zelensky decides that giving all the land back that is being asked for by Russia, or giving the land away, I should say, that's been asked by Russia, is too unpalatable, what will the US response be going forward? Because the Europeans need the US to be involved in some way. OK, they may want to step in and say, right, we'll give more money, more arms to Ukraine, but they need the US for the sort of intelligence gathering, the satellites that help Ukraine with targeting and also with defence from Russian drones and missiles.
I suppose the question will be whether the Europeans actually have those kind of forces to stand up to Russia at all. Anyway, much more to come. Thank you very much for joining us, Mark White. More from you later.
Right, still ahead. Pierce Brosnan joins Helen Mirren's calls for a male to play James Bond. But does 007 have to be a man? That's up next.
And a second council vows to remove Union Jacks and English flags that have been attached to lampposts by patriotism campaigners. But first of all, if you're in search of some holiday sun, here's the forecast for some of our top European destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
The heat isn't quite as intense as it has been across parts of Europe, but nonetheless it is still hot and sunny for many Mediterranean areas, and indeed across the Canary Islands and Madeira, fine and very warm here. The heat's still there across Iberia though, so some very high temperatures here. A few thunderstorms for southern France and across inland parts of Italy, but mostly sunny in coastal parts. And Greece and Turkey will stay largely fine, sunny and very warm over the next few days, with lots of sunshine and temperatures in the low 30s.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg's State of the Nation, Monday to Thursday from 8 p.m.
I thought you'd set up a new version of Pimlico Plumbers in London.
Yeah, my family have set up a company called We Fix London, but we started planning that, 2 years before Labour got in. If I'd known Labour was getting in, we wouldn't have planned it. So obviously we've got to comply with the tax regulations, but anybody with any sense would agree with what I'm saying. The taxes are too high in the UK for wealthy people. Wealthy people can go and work anywhere in the world and be financially a lot better off.
And we had a non-dom regime that was basically stable for 200 years. It's only recently that it's been changed. And we're changing it and making it harder, just as other countries are making it easier. So you can go to Italy and you can negotiate an amount that you will pay. Portugal's been welcoming people. Malta's been welcoming people. All over the world, countries are saying, please come and bring your money. And the UK is saying, we're going to take all your money. We don't want you anymore.
That's right. Look, they're all encouraging sort of UK business people to come there, and it's working. If you become a tax XO in Italy, you pay 200 grand for the year. You don't have to pay no more. But the real problem is we're wasting their money, and they should be encouraging entrepreneurs to be staying. I think our biggest export at the moment is wealthy people.
So you're a businessman, you know how to do things and make a profit. If you're advising the Chancellor on how to get the money the country needs to pay for the public services, what would you be saying? Because at the moment, the tax revenues don't meet our expenditure. There is a gap. Something needs to give.
Resign.
All right, but that's not the answer.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 13 minutes to 10. You're watching Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Well, a second council has vowed to remove English or British flags that have been attached to lampposts by patriotism campaigners.
Well, Tower Hamlets in East London said it would take down the St George's flags as soon as possible. Well, let's bring in former Tory leader, I wish he was the Tory leader, and MP for Chingford and Woodford Green, Sir Ian Duncan-Smith. Ian, good morning. Thanks so much for joining us. What do you think about this flag row? Are we making a lot out of nothing, or is it significant?
Well, it's significant in one regard if, of course, these councils are prepared to leave other flags up, such as the pro-Palestinian flags, and not do anything about that. And then suddenly when somebody wants to put up essentially a British flag, really, part of the Union Jack, to celebrate their sense of Britishness, then they want to take that down. And it does seem to me a bizarre and peculiar situation. We've seen it, as I say, in Birmingham, where they couldn't find anybody to empty the bins, but have managed to find a load of people to go and take the flags down. You couldn't make this up, really, if you tried. The fact is, too many of the councils seem to be embarrassed by the idea of being British or even being English. And the reality there is that that doesn't represent, then, the majority of the British population. So I simply say, you know, people should get permission to put flags up, but that would account for every flag. But at the same time, putting them up like that doesn't mean that you take one down you dislike and the other one which you're quite happy with and leave it up. It has to be a policy, and these people are making it up as they go along.
Yeah, it seems to me, Ian, that we're going to get to a stage where it's going to be local people fighting the council on a weekly basis. I've seen some of the comments on social media. These people are putting these flags up are saying, I will just buy more and I will just keep putting them up. And even though the council take them down, I will put more up again. How do politicians effectively stop this from happening? Do they have to embrace the idea of having British flags on? Maybe they need to come up with a policy of, I don't know, we're going to put some up on our local high street or something. What can they do, really, to please people who want to see flags on their high street as a result of this ongoing spout of disagreement?
Well, I think, like everything else, there needs to be a rule for everybody. So if you are a council that does not believe in putting flags up except at special occasions, you should make that clear. In which case, then people should apply for permission and put them up. They shouldn't discriminate against different national flags. You know, you can't say the Palestinian flag, which for a state that doesn't exist, somehow is okay because of the ramifications of that, and putting up the English cross of St George is wrong. I mean, the reality is, it looks to me more that they're aggravated by the idea of it being a cross of St George, which, as you know, many people on the left absolutely hate, but at the same time happy to go with something which is a protest flag, which has nothing to do with the UK. So I simply say, if you have a rule, it has to be applied equally to all, and not just to those you rather like and those you dislike.
Ian, I wonder why you think that patriotism, particularly English patriotism, is seen by some as such an ugly thing in this country. If you go to somewhere like France, which has similar levels of immigration to us, so similar disagreements perhaps about national priorities, you see tricolours everywhere, every government building, lots of just ordinary houses. They're very proud of the tricolour. Why have we not got that same culture here?
I think one of the biggest mistakes we made was to allow communities to develop separately, to develop a separate identity, to not inculcate a concept of being British. In France, I was just over there quite recently, they're proud to be French, and that is a great thing. But in the UK, what we've done, and this has been reported by a number of different commissions, that we've allowed, therefore, communities, people that have come from abroad, etc., now settled in the UK, to carry on developing their own communities and not to have that sense of link to their country where they now live. And I think that's a sad problem, and it needs, therefore, in schools to be taught that there is an enormous amount to be proud of the UK's history. I think it was, I can't remember who it was that said once, You only have to ask, what would the world look like if the UK hadn't existed? Freedom, the concept of justice, the nature of common law, the rights of the individual, all of these things, habeas corpus, all things that the UK has given to the world, which are inherent here. So much to be proud of, this remarkable country, that I just wish others would learn it much more sufficiently in schools and understand that they happen to have drawn the first in the lottery of life by being here in the UK in the first place.
No, I couldn't agree more with you, Ian. I just want to move on briefly to Ukraine, because, of course, today European leaders are flying out to Washington to be with Zelensky, to be with Trump, to talk about what's going to happen next. So Putin has said he wants and Trump has made indications that there's going to be a peace agreement coming up. Is there a point, I mean, we've been talking about this a lot this morning, is there a point to the European leaders actually being there with Trump, with Zelensky? Is it going to provide him with any support, or all they there for is to get some good shots and photo opportunities?
Well, I just come back from Ukraine. I think I've been there 4 or 5 times. I've been at the front a lot. I've been in Kharkiv and places that are relatively shelled. I've got to know them very well, and I have to say they're quite remarkable. Their stoicism and their courage is something which I think sometimes we forget is necessary if you believe in freedom. And what is I'm very worried about the Anchorage so-called agreement is that Trump went in saying that there has to be a ceasefire. That's all he wants to get. He came out having been run rings round by Putin. I'm certain of that. The old KGB bloke knows his enemy very well. And what he did was he got what he wanted, which is no ceasefire, a continuation of the war until he gets territory. Now, the problem is the territory they're sitting on right now, people forget this, has a huge amount of minerals which are very important for the future of Ukraine, and also a huge amount of industry is in that area, the Donbass. If he grabs that, he gets a huge prize. And the other thing about Putin, which people forget, he's an absolute so-and-so because he wants the whole of Ukraine. He's never said anything else. He said this is just a first stage to the re-seizure of Ukraine and the creation of a greater Russia.
Ian, I'm so sorry. We're going to have to cut you off there. I'm really sorry. We're reaching the end of the hour, but so good to have you on. Thanks very much for joining us on Britain's Newsroom this morning.
All right, back to that flag story briefly. A spokesman for Tower Hamlets Council said this: while we recognise people's wish to express their views, we have a responsibility to monitor and maintain council infrastructure. Where flags are attached to council-owned infrastructure without permission, they may be removed as part of routine maintenance.
Would you put a flag up in your garden?
I'd love to.
Which one?
I'd love
St George or Union Jack?
I'd love to have both. You know, I'd have both if I could, but I live in a block of flats, so I get in trouble for that.
You'd probably be against planning regulations. Well, still coming up, ahead of that high-stakes meeting in Washington, Donald Trump has told Zelensky it's time to end the war. Don't go anywhere.
Today's outlook: cool, calm and completely horizontal. Boxed Aircon sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning and welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. So there will be more in the way of cloud around out there today, but we'll all see some sunshine breaking through gradually through this afternoon. But we will need to watch for some thundery showers across the southwest of the UK, and more particularly Cornwall and Devon, maybe even South Wales later this afternoon. So some heavier downpours and some flashes of lightning perhaps here. Otherwise a dry day to come, but the cloud quite stubborn to clear across parts of northeast England. So here it's going to be fairly cool, temperatures suppressed into the high teens for some places. Otherwise, though, where the sunshine does break through, once again it will be a warm or very warm day with highs of 24 to 26 degrees Celsius. So as we go into this evening, and it's generally going to be a fine end to the day across the south, some sunshine, particularly in Wales and southern parts of England. Out towards the southwest, though, still the threat of some showers across Devon and Cornwall first thing this evening, perhaps even into Pembrokeshire as well. Northern Ireland and parts of Wales having a fine and mostly sunny end to the day as well. The best of the sunshine, though, probably across western parts of Scotland after a warm and sunny day here. Northeastern parts of Scotland, though, will be generally quite a bit cloudier and cooler, and there'll even be a few spits and spots of light rain or drizzle in a few spots. Now, as we go through this evening and overnight, that cloud on North Sea coast will tend to drift its way gradually in from the east, moving its way westwards. So a few dampness patches across the higher ground, and more especially across northeastern parts of Scotland, where there'll be some patchy rain at times, but a mild night to come, lows of 14 to 16 degrees Celsius. So a damp start to the day for some northeastern parts of England and northern Scotland on Tuesday. Some patchy rain in places and also some showers across the very far south of Wales and more especially Devon and Cornwall, where we could even see the odd heavy and thundery one. Skies brightening though across other southern parts of the UK, so some afternoon sunshine and temperatures here into the mid-20s once again, but feeling considerably cooler where that cloud doesn't clear, highs in the teens.
Today's outlook: cool, calm and completely horizontal. Boxed Aircon sponsors the weather on GB News.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good morning, this is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. The A725 northbound lacks an exit to Whistleberry Road due to roadworks. Motorists should follow diversions and expect delays. The M4 eastbound onslip at junction 43 Landarcy is closed, and the M66 southbound has significant lane closures after an accident. In Sussex, Brighton and Hove's A27 westbound is partly inaccessible following a collision. And on the trains, Greater Anglia reports severe disruptions between Colchester and Chelmsford, while Northern Rail has buses replacing trains between Sellafield and Whitehaven. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
There's just 2 weeks left to see how you could win your mortgage or rent paid for a whole year. That's a cash lump sum equivalent to 12 of your monthly mortgage or rent payments, right up to a whopping £20,000. Plus, we'll add an extra £5,000 on top for good measure. Make sure you don't miss out as lines close on the 29th of August. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entry start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB15 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 29th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates, 5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5. You got me good there. Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show. It's not a bad brand. Yeah. Uncensored. Very, very racy tonight. On the unpredictable. What did she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 10 o'clock on Monday the 18th of August. We're live across the United Kingdom. This is Britain's Newsroom with Alex Armstrong and Miriam Cates.
Yeah, so Europe's leaders are flying to Washington to show support for Ukraine and its president as the country's future hangs in the balance. Sir Keir Starmer will be among those joining Zelensky as he meets Donald Trump. Their presence is intended to stop a repeat of his first trip to the White House.
You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country, that's back to you, far more than a lot of people said they should have.
Well, the need for a ceasefire has never been more urgent, as overnight again, missiles and drones were fired in their hundreds across into Ukraine.
And is it last orders for our boozers? More than 200 pubs permanently shut in the last 6 months after rising taxes and the cost of labour.
Oh, the name's Bond, James Bond, but does 007 have to be a man? Yes. Pierce Brosnan joins Helen Mirren's calls for a male actor to play the super spy.
And Delulu, Skibbity and Tradwife. Do any of these words make sense to you? Well, they're the newest additions to the Cambridge Dictionary. And we'll be getting to the bottom of what they mean. Alex, some really interesting news being reported this morning that the UK government is going to bring 50 injured Gazan children over to the UK for NHS treatment, potentially with families as well. And now, of course, you know, there's some of the scenes from Gaza are absolutely appalling. There's clearly children with a lot of serious injuries, but big worries about what happens when they get here. The Home Office seems to be suggesting that they might be able to make asylum claims. You certainly can't return anyone to Gaza. And then what happens with family reunification? I'm not sure this is the right idea.
Yeah, this is another backdoor policy to bring more people to this country. That's what I think, but we want to know what you think. gbnews.com/your say. Get your views and we'll read them out in this hour. But first, here's your news with Sophia Hill.
Alex, thank you. Very good morning. It's just gone 10 o'clock. These are your latest headlines. Sir Keir Starmer is in Washington today, along with European leaders, urging President Trump not to bow to Vladimir Putin's demands in peace talks. It follows Russia's apparent success at last week's Alaska summit, which reportedly led to President Trump considering having Ukraine give up regions in return for a ceasefire. Overnight, we've learned that Russia launched 4 missiles and 140 drones in an attack on Kharkiv. The Prime Minister will be alongside Ursula von der Leyen and Emmanuel Macron as they stress unity with President Zelensky and try to avoid a repeat of tensions seen on his last Oval Office visit. And pubs are pulling their last pints at an alarming rate as 8 pubs a week shut for good in the first half of this year. Government figures show that 209 pubs were demolished or converted by June as rising taxes, higher wages and business rates hit the industry hard. Pub bosses call the closures heartbreaking and are urging the Treasury for relief and tax support in the autumn budget. 100 NHS diagnosis centres in England are now open 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. The move to extend opening hours aims to cut waiting times and speed up diagnoses for thousands of patients. More than 7 million checks and scans carried out since the extension in July. GB News spoke to Care Minister Stephen Kinnock earlier about the announcement.
Play a vitally important role in terms of maximising access for people. So if it's open 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, even people with busy working lives can very rapidly get an appointment. They have the whole spectrum of diagnostics from MRI scans to CAT scans to X-rays. And it's going to really help because they're embedded in communities. They're in your local shopping centre, maybe in your local university.
Chancellor Rachel Reeves is preparing to roll back environmental protections in order to speed up infrastructure projects. The Treasury is drawing up plans for another planning reform bill, which could scrap parts of European nature rules developers say block major schemes. Ms Reeves insists the changes are vital to kickstart growth and improve living standards. It follows from her repeated criticism of bats and newts as obstacles for economic growth. The average asking price for a home has dropped by more than £10,000 this summer, according to Rightmove. Prices fell nearly £5,000 in August alone, bringing the average to just shy of £369,000. The property website says savvy sellers are pricing competitively to attract buyers, with over a third of homes on the market now reduced. Sales agreed are up 8% on last year, while the number of homes for sale is 10% higher. The mother of 9-year-old Olivia Pratt-Corbell, who was shot dead in her own home in Liverpool, is urging communities to speak out against gun crime. Olivia's death was the 3rd fatal shooting within a week in Merseyside, and now her mother and other bereaved families work with the group Evolve to reclaim the areas worst affected by serious and organised crime. 3 years on, Olivia's mother Cheryl says the pain of losing her daughter is indescribable and wants no other family to suffer the same. Members of Evolve say that they're happy with the progress that the group is making.
I think one of the biggest successes of the Evolve project has been the 300% increase in community intelligence from our communities. That is obviously really significant because it means the communities do have more confidence in the police now. They're coming forward, they're telling the police or Crime Stoppers or whatever route they're using, they're telling them what's going on, and that means the police can take action against these criminals that are causing this harm. So I think that's a really positive narrative in terms of the relationships that have been built between the police and the community since then.
Well, the Metropolitan Police made 6 arrests at an asylum seeker hotel protest in Canary Wharf yesterday afternoon. Protesters gathered outside the Britannia Hotel, some waving England flags and others setting off pink flares. The force say they made the arrests for breaching Section 14 public order conditions, possession of Class B drugs and assaulting an emergency worker. Now, wildlife in one of England's chalk streams has collapsed over the past decade. Monitoring of the River Avon by the charity Wildfish shows a sharp decline in mayflies, shrimps and other species. Campaigners say it proves the government isn't doing enough to protect these globally rare habitats. And more than 6,000 new words have been added to the Cambridge Dictionary, including slang like skibbity, delulu and tradwife. The update also reflects new work habits with terms like mouse jiggler and environmental concerns with forever chemical. Editors say that it's social media that's driving much of the change. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. More from me in just under half an hour, but now it's back to Alex and Miriam.
Hello and welcome to Britain's Newsroom, live across the United Kingdom on GB News with me, Alex Armstrong, and Miriam Cates.
And you've been getting in touch with your views, and Grumpy Grandad is very keen on flags and says that he flies both the George flag and the Union flag, the George flag on the front of the house and the Union flag on a large flagpole, and because he lives on the top of the hill, it can be seen from many parts of the town.
Brilliant.
I'd quite like to see that. We should get a camera
Can you get
out.
a picture in
Yeah,
to us,
send us a photo.
Send us a picture, we'll see if we can show it, that'll be great. Well, moving on. Sir Keir Starmer and other European leaders are travelling to Washington to urge President Trump not to give give in to Vladimir Putin's demands to Ukraine and peace talks.
Well, this comes after Russia's apparent success at last week's Alaska summit, which reportedly led to President Trump considering having Ukraine give up regions in return for peace.
Yeah, the support from other leaders will also aim to stop the Ukrainian president from having a confrontation like the last time he was in the Oval Office.
Gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country, that's backed you far more than a lot of people said they should have.
So can Sir Keir Starmer and the other political leaders sway those peace talks, or will Putin still get his demands? Well, we're joined now in the studio by GB News Home and Security Editor Mark White. It's very difficult to watch those scenes. I remember when it was happening live, I was in the studio that day and nobody could actually believe the scenes that we were watching. There's a story in the Times today actually saying that Number 10 are trying to coach Zelensky and other European leaders on how to speak Trump.
Yeah. I mean, I'm like you, I was watching it and, oh, my God, it was just awful. It was, you know, complete and utter car crash TV. And, you know, I just wanted to reach out and say to Zelensky, shut up, stop nipping back.
Listen, I'm going to say it because, I mean, a lot of people will disagree with me. I know our audience is very split on this, but I think he was acting very petulant. And what the problem was that the American people thought we've given billions and billions and billions of pounds to this country to help them fight this war, which isn't our war. It's on a whole different continent. We don't have to get involved. And he sat there looking very upset and was constantly making more demands. That's what I think riled up Trump and JD Vance.
Yeah, I mean, I think it, you know, this is, remember, a leader who around the world has been lauded, and understandably, for the stance of himself and his nation, and everywhere he goes, he gets, you know, to address Parliament and standing ovations. And of course, then you go into the Trump White House and you are being told in no uncertain terms, you have to swallow this, you have to swallow that. Yeah. And he was nipping back. And I think, you know, as a character, he comes across as a little bit chippy. And you just need to watch other world leaders and how they behave with President Trump. Now, they've learned you've just got to suck it up, take it, as unpalatable as it might be, to absorb some of the punches verbally that come from Donald Trump. Suck it up. then, you know, get your own messaging out when you've left there. Zelensky, I think, was very badly advised or didn't listen to the advice he was given. So I would hope now, given the way that deteriorated the last time, and I think probably this time round it's going to be different, because remember, after the death of the Pope, the two leaders met in Rome and got on, we're told, much better. It was a much more sort of diplomatic end to their discussion. So let's just see how it goes this time around. But of course, for President Zelensky will be the very difficult calculation of just how much, if any, of what Russia is demanding as part of any peace negotiations he is willing to go to. Because he said, with regard to giving land territory to Russia that Russia is currently in charge of, having gained that on the battlefield, would require a referendum in his country. Is that the case? Is there any way around that? All of these things will have to be weighed up going forward.
Well, and of course, as a democratic leader, Zelensky has got to sell whatever deal they agree back to his people. Putin does not have that problem. He is, you know, an autocratic dictator. Whatever he says goes. And Zelensky's problem will be that if they do give any land away, even if they give most of the land away, all those tens of thousands of young Ukrainian men who've died, I mean, will their deaths have been for nothing? Is this going to grow a sense of bitterness in Ukraine over the next few years?
Well, this is the difficulty that he will have, and it will be unpalatable for many people, understandably, in Ukraine, as loved ones may well have fought and died to try to hold on to territory that has been slowly but surely subsumed by Russia over the last 3.5 years. But there is definitely and understandably real war weariness in Ukraine as well, and a yearning for some kind of a settlement. We have a reality on the ground, which is that around about a fifth of Ukrainian territory has been under Russian control. It's, you know, it's shifted a little bit, but it's been pretty much that same sort of level, about a fifth of Ukrainian territory that has been under Russian control for 3.5 years. So de facto, you know, they are in control of it anyway. Can you live with it being a more permanent arrangement?
All right, Mark White, thank you very much. We'll see you again very soon for some more updates on that. But we are now joined by former Royal Navy Rear Admiral and former NATO Commander Chris Parry. Chris, thank you very much for joining us. I guess I'll start off by saying is, what exactly would Zelensky expect European leaders to promise him? Because they've got a lot of rhetoric, saying things like, you know, well, yes, we want a peace deal, we want all this, but they're not actually saying that they would, or seem to, at least so far, not pledge to give any more military support to Ukraine if those peace talks fall apart.
Well, good morning. It's a very good question. I think that they're there because they don't want to miss out on a big geopolitical event. I think we need to go back to the Peloponnesian Wars to realise what's going on here. When the island of Milos said, look, we don't want to get involved in a war between Athens and Sparta, the Athenians said, look, you've got this wrong. Right as it goes only counts between great powers. The strong do what they want and the weak do what they must. And I'm afraid the European powers are in the role of weak here. They're just trying to tag along, make sure that their own interests are looked after. But frankly, when we see offers of military support to Ukraine to maintain its borders and its sovereignty, you and I and Miriam all know that without the Americans, that's absolutely worthless.
And Chris, the question people will be asking are, do the European leaders, do the European armies have what it takes to guarantee Ukrainian security? For that guarantee to be meaningful, the Western armies would have to be willing, at least in theory, to go to war with Russia. And I just don't think Putin will believe that anybody in the West has the stomach for that.
I think you're right. Without the Americans, we don't have the military capacity to take on Russia. We need about £500 billion worth of arms injection to do that. you're absolutely right, Miriam. Unless you're prepared to fight and kill Russians if they step across the line, then you're not going to deter Putin. And Putin, frankly, just wants a pause right now to ease his economy and also rearm so he can come back again at some stage in the future. Many people have said, historians like myself have said, it's just like Hitler in 1938. He took part of Czechoslovakia in the full knowledge he was going to invade the rest of it when he had a peace agreement with France and Britain. We need to look at this from the Russian perspective, not from our strategy of wishful thinking that we have but particularly in European countries. He's not going to stop. He wants the whole bottom third of Ukraine for starters, and he wants a demilitarized rump of Ukraine hanging over. He just wants to outlast Trump, and if he can do that, then he's going to win in Ukraine. It's as simple as that.
And what role will our Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, play in all of this? Of course, he's flying out there today with a raft of other European leaders. I mean, I guess what role... Two questions, perhaps, for you. What role does Sir Keir Starmer play? But what role do all the other European leaders play? Because there's a lot of voices there. We've got Ursula von der Leyen, we've got Macron, we've got Germany's Chancellor Merz going to be there. Who is the person that Trump looks to?
Well, it's solely performative, Alex. It's as simple as that. They want to get in on the act. They're NATO members, so they obviously have to support the United States. But the fact of life is we shouldn't be putting troops into Ukraine. The best peacekeepers in Ukraine are the Ukrainians. We should arm them to the teeth.
Yeah, OK.
Yes, Chris, well, thank you very much for that. And I'm sure we'll be getting more military reaction later. I mean, the choreography, Alex, is going to be very interesting on this because it has a bit of a whiff of, as a child, you go to the teacher to ask for something, a special favour, and you bring all your friends with you for moral support.
True.
And I think there's a danger that that's what it looks like and that it actually makes the Europeans look a little bit pathetic.
I think we are I think we have become pathetic. I think we have. And I look at all these European leaders, they're all marching off to Daddy, President Trump, to go, oh, please can we be in these photo opportunities with you and Zelensky so we can look tough, we can look important to our people. But you know what? There's illegal migrants flooding into Europe right now. They have their own issues to worry about, and they're there talking about the security of a country, then they can't even secure their own borders. It's a complete farce, Miriam.
Yeah. Well, I think the mistake in 2022 was, of course, all the European leaders were rightly appalled by what Putin did, although you could have predicted it, given that there was no pushback from his earlier invasion of Crimea and other things. But they wanted him to win, but were not willing to put enough arms, enough money, enough backing to win the war. And so it's rumbled on. It's become this war of attrition and just horrendous loss of life. Really, really nasty stuff. Anyway, we can only be hopeful about meeting this evening, and you can watch it all on GB News.
Fingers crossed. Well, still ahead, there are reports that the first group of Gazan children will be brought to the UK in the coming weeks for medical treatment. We'll be talking a lot about that. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Now, the National Memorial to Queen Elizabeth II will include a new bridge in St James's Park, designed by Norman Foster.
Yes, the translucent bridge will be inspired by the tiara the Queen wore on her wedding day.
But let's get more now from St James's Park with our royal correspondent, Cameron Walker. Cameron, what's the memorial going to be like?
Good afternoon, Tom and Emily. Yes, the wait is finally over. We have the final design from the renowned architect Lord Foster, who famously once criticised the King for his views on architecture. But of course, today it's all about honouring Queen Elizabeth II and her legacy. On that theme, at Marlborough Gate, which is the big gate you see behind me, which overlooks the Mall, that's going to be renamed Queen Elizabeth II Place. And there is, according to the artist impression, going to be a big statue of Queen Elizabeth II right riding a horse overlooking the Mall. Of course, incredibly poignant because she had a deep love of all things equine. Incredibly poignant, of course, as well. A love between Prince Philip and the late Queen. It's going to apparently, according to the architect, or hinted by the architect, light up at night as well, which is meant to symbolise all the diamonds that were part of that tiara. And the Queen famously also gave it to her granddaughter, loaned it to her granddaughter, Princess Beatrice, for her wedding in 2020. And then we come to the final part of St James's Park's Queen Elizabeth II's memorial, and that is going to be right here at the other end of the park, overlooking Birdcage Walk. Going to be renamed Prince Philip Gate, because a new statue of Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip is going to be erected at the other side of St James's Park. It's meant to be them, according to the artist's impressions, in their younger years.
GB News, the People's Channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Good morning. It's 21 minutes past 10. You're watching Britain's Newsroom with Alex Armstrong and Miriam Cates.
Now, we've got a brilliant panel here, haven't we? We're broadcaster engineer. If you do say so yourself, Claire. Claire Muldoon and former Labour advisor Matthew Talbot here to go through some of the top stories today. Claire, could you kick us off perhaps with this story on the Gazan children?
Yeah, so Gazan children are to be brought to the UK in the coming weeks. This is almost 6 weeks after Keir Starmer announced it in Parliament, that we should be offering our NHS to help children. Now, I've got quite a few issues with this. One, the actual implementation and management of the scheme. And two, there is words here that are saying children will be chosen, biometric tests will be done. And it just smacks of, well, we'll only take them, one, if you're ill enough, two, if we think you'll pass, and three, if we don't think you're going to be a security risk, or those that will be coming with you as carers. And on that caring aspect, who is actually going to help the children convalesce? Where are we going to put them? Now, there might be an answer with the Nightingale hospitals that were never actually used during COVID. That perhaps might be one solution. But then on the back of that, I think the UK have been under scrutiny so much, especially over the front pages now of Zelensky, Trump and Putin, and they must be thinking, well, the optic surely isn't that good for us, because MSF and PPH, which are the charities mostly involved with stabilising Gaza Strip in terms of healthcare for the children, have said, well, look, America have taken some, Italy have taken some, the UEA, Jordan and Egypt as well have taken some children in, pointing the finger, why aren't you? And I'd say we don't have the facility, we don't have the capacity, we can't actually do it. Why don't we help, if we want to, fund the treatment, or better still, get the terrorists round the table and try and sort out this mess that everyone's in.
Matthew, it's not just a matter of the logistics of getting children over here, finding the treatment. There's also the age-old immigration problem, which is that once people are here, brought family members, claimed asylum, there's absolutely no way you can return anyone to Gaza, just like we can't return anyone to Afghanistan, for example. It's become legally impossible. We see that every day in the stories on our screens. Is this just not starting a precedent for asylum seekers to come here from Palestine? Some of them will, of course, be potentially supporters of terrorism. Is this really what we need?
I think it's right to say it'd be very hard to send people back, which is a shame in a way, purely because if you speak to genuine refugees or asylum seekers, whether they be from Ukraine, Afghanistan or potentially Palestine, they'd rather go back home. You know, they want to flee the war as it currently stands, but they'd rather there be no war and they would be at home. I don't mind necessarily doing our bit. I think the problem that people will have with this is the fact that we have people coming in at the moment who are undocumented and that aren't having the correct security checks. The difference with this is I think we know who these people are, it seems. Whether the parents and whatnot, we don't know, as Claire says, who they are, but potentially there's an issue there. I don't necessarily mind, but it will smack a little bit to some people who potentially jump in the queue somewhat. But these kids are going to die otherwise. I can't say.
I know, Matthew, I agree with you as a mother and emotionally, but isn't this just another example of us thinking that the whole world is our responsibility while we have many, many problems at home that genuinely are our responsibility? Our NHS is struggling, our people are paying incredible levels of tax, our own children. And we have children here that are our responsibility. As sad as this is, those children are not the responsibility of Britain.
They're not. They're not. And Britain should not be involved. Although you can tease out the whole issue about Gaza and what happened on October the 23rd, all those 3 years ago. But you can actually also say, with hand on heart, yes, it's a desperate society, but equally in Sudan at the moment, there's a massive amounts of killing. People and children are being displaced economically, financially, every single way, through their healthcare, through everything. When does it stop? Where do we actually say it's not our responsibility? We can aid by sending out people who are equipped to deal with it. We can perhaps offer solutions, but I don't think air flying 50,000 children to this country over the next 2 weeks or 4 weeks.
I think it's 50.
Well, 50. Well, how many other weeks it's going to take, Miriam? I don't think that is the answer. It's a drop in the ocean.
Yeah, but by the way, before we move on, I totally agree. I am so sick of this country being the world's police, the world's NHS service, the world's everything else. We just got to prioritise British people for a change. By the way, we have contacted the Foreign Office about this story. We haven't had a response yet, but we'll keep you posted if we do. Where should we go to next, eh?
Well, something a bit more light-hearted. Britain's 10 million junk food addicts. This is in The Express. Apparently, we are hooked on junk food, and some experts want World Health Organization chiefs to include food addiction as a form of substance abuse. Nanny state, Matthew, or just what's needed?
That will be the charge.
Or just eat.
Very good, very good, very good.
Very good, very good. No, that's hard any time we try and help with anything, I think, as a sort of government, whoever's in charge. Ultimately, this is costing us all a fortune. And you're looking at something, I forget the figures, about millions of deaths a year that can be attributed to people's diets. It's easy to say, people are responsible for their own health and whatever else. It's not always that easy. And as someone that's an addict, probably to junk food, who knows? I mean, it's the stuff they put in it. And I just think we need to benefit everybody. We talk about the NHS being on its knees and the fact that we've got to look after people. I think it's totally sensible to regulate sugar and salt within the foods that we eat. It's the way forward. But there'll be a lot of pushback from food companies and whatever, but they're actively poisoning our kids. They're actively poisoning us.
You're right, but the problem I've got at the moment, and I totally agree, by the way, but the problem we've got is food inflation is up again. It's going up again thanks to the last disastrous budget, Matthew. And Claire, I just wonder, what point are we going to... We need to make good, healthy food, more accessible, more easy to get hold of, easier to cook. At the moment, you walk into Tesco's, you walk into Sainsbury's, you go down there pre-packaged style. It is full of fatty rubbish, and that's what they're selling you. But also, the average food inflation, what do you think it might be up to another 4% by the end of the year?
I think the issue here is deeper, actually. I think during COVID and during the pandemic, the rise in these apps that deliver your food to your door, it became a multi-million-pound business, OK?
Billion.
It's weaning people away from the immediacy of it, OK? We have got so many cooking programmes. We have got so many celebrity chefs. Why aren't people using the knowledge that they can get to actually cook food?
People can't cook, though.
They can't, and that's the irony, Alex. We've got so many... Kids now have been brought up with cooking programmes. We've got celebrity chefs, we've got restaurants, we've got everything, but people don't seem to be able to cook, and I think that's a fundamental error in bringing children up. I think parents, especially the homemaker or the trad wife, is another story we're going to move on to next, should be there. It's their responsibility to nourish children.
But is this the point, though? Have we lost our cultural identity because women are having to be thrown into the workforce at such... they're not there, they're not being able to look after their kids at home, therefore they're not able to teach and raise them.
I do. And also, it's very well for the Labour government to stand up and say, oh, we're building homes. They're not building homes. They're building flats. They're caging people in like a battery hen in homes. The kitchen facilities not there, the rise of the air fryer, the microwave. It's wrong. We need to get back to basics. We need to be able to cook decent food. And actually, on this article as well, last week there was a report to say that calorific values next to food had made no difference at all to people ordering.
Well, they made a difference to me. Once Costa started putting on the number of calories on their pieces of cake, I have never had one since. Because you look at it and think, 450 calories, not worth it. So it's
what the drinks are. Some of the drinks are 500 calories.
Let's not let men off the hook, the idea that it's women forced into work and nobody's cooking at home. They've got to step up to the plate as well. And I think there's three things on this. There's climate change that will play its part on fruit and veg because nobody can grow anything because...
Matthew, really?
You can't read a report every week about the fact that you can't grow olives, you can't grow blueberries, you can't grow cucumbers in Spain. It's too hot. You
grow
can't
them
grow
here.
like that.
Polytunnels work everywhere. They actually work here too.
There's the issue of the fact that there is a laziness issue. I don't discount that. But I think the third issue is the issue of time poverty, the fact that people are totally overworked, underpaid, and because you want that little bit of joy in life when you get in, you might just want to watch Coronation Street or Netflix. It's far easier to put a pizza in the oven for 20 minutes.
True. But there is also this addiction factor that you were saying, and I think if you look into what the big food companies do to hack our kind of natural instincts, so how to make us not feel full when we really are, how to make us just crave that next bite. It is quite sinister, actually, how our senses are being manipulated by
now they're going to be selling you Ozempic instead, aren't they? This is the problem. They create
make
a
money
problem,
making you
then they
fat.
sell you a solution, and there's this cycle constantly, this problem, solution, problem. Oh, we made you all fat, now we're going to sell you a drug to take instead because we can't get you to the gym anyway.
Exactly.
We're going to have you both back very soon, so stay with us. We'll talk about those. We'll talk about skibbity toilets. What are they? Yeah, we'll find out what they are. But now it's time for your 60-second news update with Sophia Hill.
Good morning. The headlines from the GB Newsroom just after 10:30. So Keir Starmer is in Washington today with European leaders urging President Trump not to bow to Vladimir Putin's demands in peace talks. It follows Russia's apparent success at last week's Alaska summit, which reportedly led to President Trump considering having Ukraine give up regions in return for a ceasefire. 8 pubs a week shut for good in the first half of this year. Figures show that 209 pubs were demolished or converted by June as rising taxes, higher wages and business rates hit the industry hard. Chancellor Rachel Reeves is preparing to roll back environmental protections to speed up infrastructure projects. She insists these changes are vital and continues her criticism of bats and newts as economic obstacles. The average asking price for a home has dropped by more than £10,000 this summer, according to Rightmove. Prices fell nearly £5,000 in August alone, bringing the average to just shy of £379,000. And more than 6,000 new words have been added to the Cambridge Dictionary, including slang like skibbity, delulu and tradwife. Editors are saying that it's social media that's driving so much of the new changes. Those are the latest headlines for now. More news at the top of the hour.
Take the GB News family with you on any device. As long as you have an internet connection, tune into GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond.
Well, coming up next, a new report shows that British manufacturers are lagging behind their international competitors. Where did we go wrong? We'll be asking that. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Good morning and welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. So there will be more in the way of cloud around out there today, but we'll all see some sunshine breaking through gradually through this afternoon. But we will need to watch for some thundery showers across the southwest of the UK, and more particularly Cornwall and Devon, maybe even South Wales later this afternoon. So some heavier downpours and some flashes of lightning perhaps here. Otherwise a dry day to come, but the cloud quite stubborn to clear across parts of northeast England. So here it's going to be fairly cool, temperatures suppressed into the high teens for some places. Otherwise, though, where the sunshine does break through, once again it will be a warm or very warm day with highs of 24 to 26 degrees Celsius. So as we go into this evening, and it's generally going to be a fine end to the day across the south, some sunshine, particularly in Wales and southern parts of England. Out towards the southwest, though, still the threat of some showers across Devon and Cornwall first thing this evening, perhaps even into Pembrokeshire as well. Northern Ireland and parts of Wales having a fine and mostly sunny end to the day as well. The best of the sunshine, though, probably across western parts of Scotland after a warm and sunny day here. Northeastern parts of Scotland, though, will be generally quite a bit cloudier and cooler, and there'll even be a few spits and spots of light rain or drizzle in a few spots. Now, as we go through this evening and overnight, that cloud on North Sea coast will tend to drift its way gradually in from the east, moving its way westwards. So a few dampness patches across the higher ground and more especially across northeastern parts of Scotland where there'll be some patchy rain at times, but a mild night to come, lows of 14 to 16 degrees Celsius. So a damp start to the day for some northeastern parts of England and northern Scotland on Tuesday. Some patchy rain in places and also some showers across the very far south of Wales and more especially Devon and Cornwall, where we could even see the odd heavy and thundery one. Skies brightening though across other southern parts of the UK, so some afternoon sunshine and temperatures here into the mid-20s once again, but feeling considerably cooler where that cloud doesn't clear, highs in the teens.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good morning, this is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. In North Yorkshire, a collision on the A19 southbound at the junction with the A172 has closed one lane, causing 20-minute delays and should clear by 10:45 this morning. Brighton and Hove face a collision on the A27 westbound between the A293 and the A270, resolving by 11 o'clock. No exit from the A725 northbound to Whistlebury Road due to maintenance. Follow diversion routes. The M4 eastbound at junction 43 Landesey has on-slip closures due to roadworks. And on the trains, Greater Anglia faces major disruption between Colchester and Chelmsford. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom with me, Alex Armstrong, and Miriam Cates.
And lots of you have been getting in touch on gbnews.com/yoursay. Lots of comments about the plans of the government to bring in 50 Gazan children for treatment here in the UK. Her Indoors, we'll be talking about trad wives later, Her Indoors says, my husband has just been diagnosed with skin cancer. His GP told him he would make an urgent referral to see a specialist, but that will probably take 3 months. We received a letter yesterday to advise he's on the waiting list to go on the waiting list for an outpatient appointment. I mean, there are just so many problems in the NHS already. How can you be against treating sick children? I totally accept that. But on the other hand, it's not an unlimited resource, is it?
No, and Susan here was saying, why don't the Arab countries take the children and their parents? Why is it that so many of them don't even want to have people from Gaza in their country at all? I mean, why do they have to come here to the West? They should be placed going to countries where there's closer culture at least. We can, maybe we can donate and people could be charitable.
Well, the only country that has a border with Gaza other than Israel is Egypt, and they shut that border as soon as the war started.
There we go. And Jordan as well, I believe.
Well, do keep commenting on gbnews.com/yoursay. But moving on now, British manufacturing companies are falling down global automation tables and have been lagging behind international competitors for over 2 decades.
Now, this is according to a report by Make UK and Sage, which warned training of people in relevant skills is well below what's needed for Britain to catch up. Well, we're joined now by Chair of University Technical College in South Durham, David Land. David, thank you for joining us. There's a scary future on the horizon for many young people. They are facing down not only a terrible job market if they're coming out of university now, but they've not got the skills to keep up with the new trends of robotics and AI, perhaps.
Yeah, good morning. I think it's two sides of the fence. In terms of industry, I think each level to get the right level of support to take on levels of automation. Over the last 3 years, it's probably all worked hard and didn't think we would set their business correct. But it's hard for them to take on automation.
Even saying things as simple as ERP and MRP systems. But on the flip side, the key side, these systems are still one size fits all. We've just seen the recent A-level results where the North and the South divide is getting better. The good news is those out perform girls for the first time. Not that that's a thing to support, but boys that don't stop. Those systems are probably meet
David, apologies. David, we're really struggling to hear you at the moment. Hopefully we can get back to you at some point soon on this, and we'll get you back on to talk about this, because this is a really big topic, Miriam. You know, I'm constantly having conversations. My little brothers, they're about 10, 15 years younger than me, some of them. They're coming out of university now with like 50 grand's worth of debt. Right?
Yeah.
50 grand's worth of debt. And they're looking at the job market and going, well, I can't get an office job anymore because no one's hiring for them. I mean, terrible economy as it is since the last budget, as you all know. And they're thinking, well, actually, now I might have to go and train to be a plumber or a lecky.
Yeah.
Because...
Well, plumbers and electricians make good money, but... You know, I completely agree with you. This is a huge story. If you think back in the 90s, about 16% of our GDP was accounted for by manufacturing sales. We exported around the world. We had what's called a positive balance of trade. We exported more than we imported. That's collapsed. It's halved. It's a huge problem for national debt, but it's a massive problem for the UK as a productive nation. But we just don't have the skills coming through.
Yeah. Well, we're going to bring David back. Hopefully, David Land there, Chair of University Technical College, South Durham. David, hopefully we can hear you better this time. So let's pick up where we were. We're talking about skills that young people are leaving at least universities with. Are they prepared?
No, I don't think they are. And I think, go back to the school system, I think the challenge is that the schools is one size fits all. You know, there are children now with a lot of challenges. There are a lot that don't have the higher level academics that they need to come out to be able to support the AI technologies of the future. So it's the school systems that needs fixing. And I think, as I said, it's one size fits all. There are kids with multiple challenges and tasks. It's how you engage them, how you make them work and life ready. And that's why facilities like the UTC, certainly ours in South Durham, we're first and foremost conscious of getting students work and life ready. So when they go in there, they're a valued asset to the employee.
Yeah. Can I quickly ask, I mean, one of our viewers here, as a man called Alan, said net zero energy prices make most industry in the UK unprofitable. He's got a point, hasn't he? There's not just, of course, a skills challenge, but there's an economic challenge. The priorities of the government of the day, which are not to invest in these heavy energy businesses, might be restricting the British economy.
Well, yeah, I mean, the energy is a real challenge because we've got some real natural resources sat underneath us where we can tap into things like geothermal. We don't use enough solar. Instead of having to invest, 300 billion or whatever it is in a 30-year program to get a nuclear site up, we've got a lot of assets that we can tap into, and we need GB Energy to start to become more effective and more proactive about trying to pick projects up and not being very reserved about looking for a 2 or 3 year return on investment. This is long term. We're here for the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years, not the next 2 or 3.
I do think we've fallen so far behind our European competitors in this area, though. I was looking up the statistics earlier, and in England, just 4% of under 25s have sub-degree technical qualifications, compared to 20% of German young people, 10% of British young people go into apprenticeships, 60% of German young people. Why have we got this gap in the UK where so few of our school leavers go into some sort of technical training?
It's an interesting one. I used to work for a German-based company, and we always knew in Germany an engineer has got the same status as a doctor. In the UK, that's not the same. And I think it's changing that image. Everything that we do on our day-to-day, the stuff you've got on your desk are manufactured. Your mugs, your pens, the papers, they're all made. Yet we've, for the last 20 years, have tried to discourage students to go and do certain things. And we're a great country in terms of innovation and thought. We've just got to build on it. But we've got to change the way the kids go through the schools. They're just too stereotyped.
And David, as well, lots of other viewers writing here to say, well, of course, we are seeing record high migration levels into the country. That is, and these are coming on so-called skilled visas. I think there's a question mark about how many of them are actually skilled in the technical sense. But I mean, our young people are leaving college, they're at university, they've come up with these massive debts, and then they're being beaten by someone who might come from abroad, who is half as expensive as they are and will live on a much lower cost of living than these young people who are looking for at least a good salary to kick off their careers.
Yeah, it's true. There's more disincentives. There are incentives for the young people. The university system is a challenge in terms of that sector is struggling in itself in terms of, its reliance on foreign students to try and top up because of the costs of our UK. But business may have to help. You know, it's how do we sponsor? How do we get kids age 16 engaged with industry that are then tied to a company that can then do their education and learn and earn at the same time and then pop out being a much more valued asset. It's about changing the way we do things. We talked, the first word we used at the beginning was innovation. We talk about it in manufacturing context, but we don't talk it in terms of the support and services. How do we innovate? How do we make things better and more easier for kids to get into industry and make it more exciting? Because it is. It's a job for life, without a doubt. In manufacturing, if you start in that, it's a job for life. And I had a great journey.
David Land, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Alex, when I was an MP in my patch, there's lots of manufacturing in South Yorkshire, steel and others. And I do think it is about the status that they were offering great jobs, great training to school leavers, very good salaries, really interesting work, yet they couldn't attract young people to it because school processes children into university. And I used to be a school teacher. I know exactly what it's like. Most school teachers have got no experience of anything other than university.
Yeah.
So how do you know what's out there that you can recommend your students?
Yeah, and I think you're right on this image of industry being, this is an old school image of industry being like, shunned upon and told kids that actually it's glorious to work in an office. Well, let me tell you, having done a very long stint working in an office, I'd actually rather be doing something with my hands, be standing and doing things. And hopefully that comes back.
Yeah, and I think the kind of joy and satisfaction of seeing things that you have made and are exporting around the world is pretty satisfying.
Totally,
you need to get it back. Anyway, coming up next, Pierce Brosnan has joined Helen Mirren's calls for a male to play James Bond. But does 007 have to be a man, Alex?
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
I think we're going to disagree on this.
No, I don't think we are. Anyway, in search of some holiday sun, here is a forecast of some of our top European destinations.
I forecast a perfect holiday in the sun.
Weather looking good then?
For sure, and no worries about our travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
The heat isn't quite as intense as it has been across parts of Europe, but nonetheless it is still hot and sunny for many Mediterranean areas, and indeed across the Canary Islands and Madeira, fine and very warm here. The heat's still there across Iberia though, so some very high temperatures here. A few thunderstorms for southern France and across inland parts of Italy, but mostly sunny in coastal parts. And Greece and Turkey will stay largely fine, sunny and very warm over the next few days, with lots of sunshine and temperatures in the low 30s.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
You've read the headlines, you've heard what those in power have to say. How about now we actually get to the truth?
They would pay attention.
We go beyond the political theatre and tell you what's really going on behind the scenes. For a massive council tax hike, one of the biggest in the UK. Others follow their lines, but we go off script.
You sound like a broken record, you say that week after week.
Cutting through the narratives and giving you unique perspectives. That's Ben Leo tonight, Saturdays and Sundays from 9 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m.
Only on GB News.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom. Well, Pierce Brosnan has U-turned after previously saying James Bond should be played by a woman. He's joined calls from Dame Helen Mirren, who has said that despite being a feminist, she believes the next 007 must be a man. Well, joining us now is the editor of 007 magazine, Graham Wright. Good morning, Graham. What's your view on the latest comments about the gender of the next James Bond? Should there be one?
Well, there obviously should be a James Bond, but it should never be a woman. I think this is something that was in the media and the press some years ago that's kind of been dragged up to a degree. It's a nonsense. It was a nonsense when it was first spoken about some years ago, and it's just as big a nonsense now. It needs to be a 6 foot tall, dark-haired, strapping, middle-aged guy. I say middle, I mean talking about 32.
Graham, like,
32 is quite young in my book.
Well, but I mean, look, Graham, what I say is that a lot of these. I mean, I know Amazon, I believe, have bought the rights to James Bond now. I mean, you've seen what they've done with some of their other shows. I'm not so convinced they're not going to go down this super woke, what I would call woke route. Is it? Do they really need to reinvent James Bond though? Because you've had so many iterations of him. They pretty much killed him off in the last movie. Do we need to reinvent the idea of James Bond, or should James Bond just retire? Should we say, actually, do you know what? We've had James Bond for almost 100 years. Actually, should we let this character rest for at least a bit of time, or maybe just retire the character before it gets destroyed by modern reinventions of it?
Well, I think there's always going to be a market. There's always going to be an audience for James Bond if those films are made the correct way. I mean, you've got a perfect blueprint. If you look at the Bond films in the 60s, and you follow that as a blueprint, you can't go wrong, because most of them are based on Ian Fleming, and it's the best Bond films are the ones that are based on Fleming's books quite closely. What came after Diamonds Are Forever, Live and Let Die, with Roger Moore in 1973, it was a totally different kind of comedic Bond, which I was never particularly keen on. It's the 60s Bonds that I think they should follow, but they do need a right actor, and I think the right actor is Stuart Martin.
Interesting. Henry Cavill's a name that's thrown around quite a lot. He seems to be the people's, at least people online's choice.
That's people that don't know what they're talking about, basically.
You tell him, Graham. You tell him.
He's not the guy at all. He's too tied up. He's too identified with Superman and the other kind of generic things he's been in. He's obviously got a bit too old for it now as well. But it needs somebody that's got the body movement, that air of arrogance that Connery had in those films. And Stuart Martin ticks the boxes on all of that completely.
Very interesting. And just really briefly, Graham, you've obviously devoted your professional life to James Bond, the 007 franchise. What do you think is the secret of its ongoing popularity?
Well, I think it's great escapist entertainment. The books were escapists. The films are even more escapist. What people have to remember is it's entertainment, and it's a very British entertainment, and it's entered not just British culture but world culture, and everybody loves that character. But if you take away the traits that made that character the character that everybody loved from the 1960s, you destroy it piece by piece, and that's not the way to do it. That's not the way to go forward.
Yeah,
first you have to go backwards to a degree to go forwards.
Yeah.
They need to look at those 60s films as the blueprint.
Yeah, Graham, I totally agree with you. Editor of 007 magazine there, Graham Rye, thank you for joining us. Always got to be a bloke, a British white man. I think that's what the people want. Well, we'll see you just after the weather. Stay with us.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. For many, a fine, bright day out there with quite a bit of sunshine around, but parts of the east staying fairly grey, and there are a few showers close to this area of low pressure across the southwest of England, Somerset, Devon, Cornwall, perhaps parts of South Wales also may catch a shower here. Also quite hazy the skies here, thanks to smoke and Saharan dust blown up from the south. A lot of low clouds coming into parts of eastern England at times, melting away somewhat through the day, but parts of the east coast may stay a little glum. For many, though, it's dry, it's fine. Got some sunny spells and temperatures getting into the mid-20s with some sunshine over southeast Wales towards Bristol as well. Cooler, though, on these North Sea coasts where it may stay pretty grey. Quite a lot of cloud across the Northern Isles as well. Might even produce the odd little bit of drizzle. And around the coast of eastern Scotland, staying fairly glum and chilly. But much of western central Scotland dry, fine and sunny. A fine evening across Northern Ireland. Much of northern England, although again to the east of the Pennines could stay fairly cloudy. Further south, hazy sunshine. I don't think we'll see too many showers through the evening across the southwest, but we may well see one or two coming back as we go through the night across the far southwest of England and again South Wales. Might even hear the odd rumble of thunder today and tonight in the showers too, but say most places won't see them. Many areas staying dry. The mist and low cloud will come back in overnight. Could get down to single figures in rural parts of Scotland, but mostly we're staying in the low teens in towns and cities. Similar story tomorrow. A grey morning across these eastern areas, staying pretty glum along some of the coasts. Maybe the odd little bit of drizzle. Again, southwest England, parts of South Wales could see one or two showers. Certainly quite a lot of cloud across Cornwall and Devon, with maybe some heavier showers likely here. Pretty chilly on those North Sea coasts, but in the sunny spells, temperatures again into the 20s.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
What does it feel like to be a Great British Giveaway winner?
That's a big surprise.
Oh my God, I'm gonna cry.
Do you know what? I've never won anything like this in my life.
Oh my God, this is amazing.
That is absolutely fantastic.
We're over the moon.
Yes, that is fantastic.
You know, you have no idea how much I needed it. Oh my goodness.
You've won £54,321.
Please don't joke. This would change my life.
Oh, thank you so much. I was gobsmacked. Thank you, GB News.
I'd say don't hesitate, do it. If you're not in it, you've got no chance of winning it.
Thank you.
You weren't expecting to get that call today, were you?
No, I wasn't.
You really could be our next big winner. Head over to gbnews.com/win now to find out how and get your entry for the Great British Giveaway. Great prizes, even greater wins.
You've read the headlines, you've heard what those in power have to say. How about now we actually get to the truth?
They would pay attention.
We go beyond the political theatre and tell you what's really going on behind the scenes. For a massive council tax hike, one of the biggest in the UK. Others follow their lines, but we go off script.
You cannot have broken records, so week after week.
Cutting through the narratives and giving you unique perspectives. That's Ben Leo tonight, Saturdays and Sundays from 9 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's News Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
It's 11 a.m. on Monday, the 18th of August, live across the United Kingdom. This is Britain's Newsroom with me, Alex Armstrong, and Miriam Cates.
Our top story this morning, Europe's leaders fly to Washington to show support for Ukraine and its president as the country's future hangs in the balance. Sir Keir Starmer will be among those joining Zelensky as he meets Donald Trump. Their presence is intended to stop a repeat of his first trip to the White House.
You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country, that's back to you, far more than a lot of people said they should have.
Well, the need for a ceasefire has never been more urgent, with more missile and drone strikes killing at least 3 people in Ukraine overnight.
Is it last orders for our boozers? More than 200 pubs permanently shut in the last 6 months after rising taxes and the cost of labour.
And Delulu, Skibbity and Tradwife. Do any of these words make sense to you? Well, they're the newest additions to the Cambridge Dictionary, and we'll be getting to the bottom of what they actually mean. Now, earlier, Alex, we were talking about that story in Tower Hamlets where the council are forcing people to remove flags, Union Jacks and St George's flags. And Grumpy Grandad got in touch to tell us that he has flags in his house. And I believe that we have a photo. Look at that.
Look at that.
That's a proper flagpole. That's a Union Jack.
There's 2. It's glorious, isn't
Yes.
it? It's 2. There's one on the left and one on the right there. One on the house, one on the... I believe I'm right. I mean, my eyesight's not that great.
No,
if you've got pictures of your flags, send them in to us, all right? GB News at GBViews at gbnews.uk if you want to send them in to us. We've also been talking about this cultural revolution with Gen Alpha. We were talking about trad wise. What do you think that means? Get your thoughts in on that, gbnews.com/your say. But first, here is your news with Sophia Hill.
Alex, thank you and a very good morning. It's just gone 11 o'clock. These are your latest headlines. Sir Keir Starmer is in Washington with European leaders today, urging President Trump not to bow to Vladimir Putin's demands in peace talks. It follows Russia's apparent success at last week's Alaska summit, which reportedly led to President Trump considering having Ukraine give up regions in return for a ceasefire. Overnight, we've learnt that Russia launched 4 missiles and 140 drones in an attack on Kharkiv. The Prime Minister, alongside Ursula von der Leyen, Emmanuel Macron, will all stress unity with President Zelensky and try to avoid a repeat of tension seen in his last Oval Office visit. Pubs are pulling their last pint at an alarming rate as 8 pubs a week shut for good in the first half of this year. Government figures show that 209 pubs were demolished or converted by June as rising taxes, higher wages and business rates hit the industry hard. Pub bosses call the closures heartbreaking and they're urging the Treasury for relief and tax support in the autumn budget. 100 NHS diagnostic centres in England are now open 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. The move to extend opening hours aims to cut waiting times and speed up diagnoses for thousands of patients. More than 7 million checks and scans have been carried out since the extension took place in July. GB News spoke to Care Minister Stephen Kinnock earlier on about the announcement.
Play a vitally important role in terms of maximising access for people. So if it's open 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, even people with busy working lives can very rapidly get an appointment. They have the whole spectrum of diagnostics from MRI scans to CAT scans to X-rays. And it's going to really help because they're embedded in communities. They're in your local shopping centre, maybe in your local university.
Chancellor Rachel Reeves is preparing to roll back environmental protections to speed up infrastructure protests. The Treasury is drawing up plans for another planning reform bill, which could scrap parts of European nature rules developers say block major schemes. Ms Reeves insists the changes are vital to kickstart growth and improve living standards. It follows on from her repeated criticism of bats and newts as obstacles for economic growth. Now, the average asking price for a home has dropped by more than £10,000 this summer, according to Rightmove. Prices fell nearly £5,000 in August alone, bringing the average to just shy of £379,000. The property website says savvy sellers are pricing competitively to attract buyers, with now over a third of homes on the market reduced. Sales agreed are up 8% on last year, while the number of homes for sale is 10% higher. The mother of 9-year-old Olivia Pratt-Corbell, who was shot dead in her own home in Liverpool, is urging communities to speak out against gun crime. Olivia's death was the third fatal shooting within a week in Merseyside, and now her mother and other bereaved families work with the group Evolve to reclaim the areas worst affected by serious and organised crime. 3 years on, Olivia's mother Cheryl says that the pain of losing her daughter is indescribable, and she doesn't want any other family to suffer the same. Members of Evolve say that they're happy with the progress that the group is making.
I think one of the biggest successes of the Evolve project has been the 300% increase in community intelligence from our communities. That is obviously really significant because it means the communities do have more confidence in the police now. They're coming forward, they're telling the police or Crime Stoppers or whatever route they're using, they're telling them what's going on, and that means the police can take action against these criminals that are causing this harm. So I think that's a really positive narrative in terms of the relationships that have been built between the police and the community since then.
The Metropolitan Police made 6 arrests at an asylum seeker hotel protest in Canary Wharf yesterday. Protesters gathered outside the Britannia Hotel waving England flags and others setting off pink flares. The force say that they made the arrests for breaching Section 14 public order conditions, possession of Class B drugs and assaulting an emergency worker. Wildlife in one of England's chalk streams has collapsed over the past decade. Monitoring of the River Avon by charity Wild Fish shows that sharp declines in mayflies, shrimp and other species. Campaigners are saying that it proves that the government isn't doing enough to protect these globally rare habitats. And more than 6,000 new words have been added to the Cambridge Dictionary, including slang like skibbity, delulu and tradwife. The update also reflects new work habits with terms like mouse jiggler and environmental concerns with forever chemical. Editors are saying that it's social media driving much of the new changes. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now, but before I hand you back to Alex and Miriam, let's check in with the markets.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's market. The pound will buy you $1.34 and 1.115 euros. The price of gold is £2,494.16 per ounce, and the FTSE 100 is at 999.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Hello, welcome back. You're watching Britain's Newsroom live across the United Kingdom on GB News with Alex Armstrong and Miriam Cates.
Well, we're joined by GB News Home and Security Editor Mark White because there has been some more breaking news which could put today's Crunch Talks in Washington in severe jeopardy. Mark, bring us the latest on that.
Well, I think it'll certainly focus minds in the talks in Washington, with more death and destruction on the ground in Zaporizhzhia in southeastern Ukraine. An overnight missile and drone attack has killed 3 and injured 18 so far. But the Ukrainians are used to this. It's a daily occurrence. And, you know, on the other side as well, Ukraine is pumping out ever more drones and some missiles towards Russian infrastructure, which they've had some successes with. Of course, you remember a month or 2 back, that big audacious attack on Russia's strategic bombers quite far inland in Russia. So this is happening all the time. But I do think it does focus attention on the need for some kind of a solution, some kind of a ceasefire, but it has to be something that is palatable for Volodymyr Zelensky. And giving away significant tracts of Ukrainian soil to Russia might be a step too far. If that is the case, he needs to know that he's got the backing of these European leaders that have traipsed across to Washington to be there for him. So are they going to continue to actually put even more in the way of money, resources, weaponry into Ukraine? Because they'd certainly have to do that if they don't come to some kind of a deal and the US steps back from that. And then there's the more alarming potential issue here for Ukraine. If the US does step back from defending Ukraine, as it does at the moment, not just in terms of weaponry and resources over the years, but also the likes of its satellite capabilities to provide the kind of targeting that Ukraine needs to go after targets in Russia, but also to try to defend itself from incoming munitions from Ukraine. If, you know, they also withdraw that capability, that is going to be very, very difficult for Ukraine.
The US tactics seemed to be, before the meeting with Putin in Alaska, that they would ask Putin to agree to a ceasefire first and then start negotiating a peace agreement. And the logic behind that is, what's the point of negotiating peace if Putin's continuing to make gains, if Ukraine is continuing to be killed? And of course, I assume that's what the Ukrainians want, is a ceasefire. Where do you go from here if he's continuing to fight whilst talking at the same time?
Well, he's continuing to fight because he sees it as more leverage. Of course, the more intense a bombardment, the more tracts of land that he can gain in this kind of final push, if you like, before a ceasefire deal, then clearly that's to his advantage. That's why you're seeing, you know, the continued push from Russia, and they will continue to push until we're at the stage where they've got some kind of a deal. And as I say, it really just depends on whether that deal will be something that President Zelensky and the Ukrainian people can live with.
Mark, thanks for keeping us updated. We'll have you back soon to tell us more, because I'm sure there'll be far more breaking news on this as it evolves over the next few hours. But joining us now is Chairman of Republicans Overseas, Greg Swenson. Greg, lovely to see you. Look, many people will be asking whether this escalation in violence will change the future of peace talks. I mean, of course, what this throws back to me, Greg, is that moment when Trump had supposedly struck a peace deal between Iran and Israel, and then immediately missiles were fired at each other and Trump was furious. Do you expect to see Trump as furious about this situation, or is this just the realities of war?
Yeah, but I think it's more the latter, and I do understand what happened with Iran and Israel, and technically Israel had not violated the ceasefire. There was a deadline of, I don't know if it was 6 or 8 hours later, and I think the president was frustrated because it would have been nice if they just, you know, started enforcing their own ceasefire at that moment instead of waiting.
He wanted some goodwill, didn't he?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that was frustrating. And obviously he expressed that on before boarding Marine One. But I do think that in this case, there is no ceasefire. You know, they had hoped to maybe consider that on Friday, but that didn't happen. And it sounds like over the weekend, President Trump has suggested that they want to go right to a peace agreement and just bypass the ceasefire phase. I mean, it's not a perfect world. And unfortunately, yes, it is the realities of war.
Now, Greg, Trump was elected partly on a promise to withdraw America from the so-called forever wars, and he indicated that he would be able to end the conflict with Ukraine in one day. And yet here we are, 6-8 months later, he's now becoming more deeply involved in the struggle against Russia. How is this going to play out back home? Do Americans have patience for the US offering security guarantees, for example, or do you think their patience will run out?
Yeah, they do have some patience for that. Right now, it's the polling looks like it's roughly a third. A third of Americans want to increase support for Ukraine. A third want to maintain it the way it is, and a third wants to lower or reduce the support for Ukraine. So, you know, basically 2/3 of Americans are all in on this. And so the president understands that, but he also understands, as you said, he doesn't want to be in forever wars. He's a peace president. He's an anti-war president. And this whole 24-hour thing, you know, that was a bit of hyperbole, of course, but the president had every intention of trying to stop this. He could just walk away and let the Ukraine war effort suffer. But that's not, he doesn't want to do that either. He wants to help. He's not afraid to use military force when necessary, and you saw that when he pushed back against Iran, and quite effectively, by the way. And the same thing in his first term when he had General Soleimani terminated. So, the president is not afraid to use it. Yes, yeah. I agree. He doesn't want to be in forever wars, though. That's for sure.
Greg, how effective will European leaders? Our Prime Minister Keir Starmer is obviously flying out to Washington today with a raft of others as well. I mean, I'd be here all day if I listed them all off. How effective are European leaders are actually getting through to Trump? Because it seems, in my opinion at least, that they are just a waste of energy being there, and they're just there for show. What's your take on that?
It's probably a little bit of both. As Jennifer pointed out this morning, Jennifer Ewing, they are important in terms of providing the security guarantee. And that's maybe a show of strength or a show of unity. And I think the president, that's why he invited them. That's why the president, made that first phone call to the Secretary General of NATO. And so, I think it's important that they're there as long as they don't try to scuttle this thing. And that's one of the concerns, is that they're all just sort of enthusiastic about, doing whatever they can, however long it takes to support Ukraine. And the problem with that is it just extends the war. The Europeans can't afford that. Everybody's made this commitment to 5% of GDP on defense spending, but where are they going to get that money when most of them are welfare states, including the UK? And so I'm not sure that they can really have, a lot of power behind their suggestions. But on the other hand, I think it is important. And, look at Putin right now. Obviously we can't trust anything that he says, and you're going to need that security guarantee if this peace agreement means anything.
Mm-hmm. Well, Greg Swenson, thank you as always for your time and your insights this morning. Well, staying on this topic, we're now joined by the former Labour Defence Secretary, Jeff Hoon. Jeff, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. Are you optimistic about what's going to unfold over the next few hours in Washington?
I think optimism is in short supply just at the moment because no one really knows how to handle President Trump. I don't envy Sir Keir Starmer or his colleagues in trying to decide how they should deal with the president at this point. So far, the tactic appears to have been to, frankly, be nice to him, be nice about what he says, to welcome the progress that was apparently made in Alaska, and not to say or do anything that might irritate him. The issue is how long that can go on for. How much longer can it be possible to continue to say something which, frankly, appears to collide with the reality just at the moment? There doesn't appear to have been much progress in Alaska. There doesn't appear to be a deal on the table. There's certainly no ceasefire. And how Western leaders deal with that in the face of a man who is capable of changing his mind pretty quickly really is something that I wouldn't like to have to speculate about, which is why I think optimism is in short supply.
Well, Jeff, as well, I think there's an argument to be made here that America is really fighting this war. Our defence and our military expenditure is still too low for us to be effective at helping Ukraine. So of course, I mean, it seems to me that Starmer and Macron and Merz going over to Washington is just a farce. It's a political stunt, isn't it? I mean, whether we're there or not doesn't really matter. We have to do what President Trump says we are going to do. We don't really have any say in this, do we? We're just there as talking heads.
I don't agree with that, because I think it's important that President Zelensky is not isolated in the way he was in that previous meeting in the White House.
But how would Keir Starmer being there stop that from happening?
Because there is a clear and concerted view by the European nations that we should stand alongside Ukraine, alongside President Zelensky, and their physical presence will demonstrate that. And actually, I think it does matter to President Trump that they are there. And I think it will help President Zelensky and prevent him from being quite as isolated and attacked as he was on that previous unfortunate occasion.
Yes, it still seems to me, though, Jeff, that regardless of whether the European leaders it seems like President Trump and Zelensky have made up, for all intents and purposes, from seeing the last few meetings between the two of them. And Trump does seem to be firmly on Zelensky's side, at least now. But again, I mean, if there's a press conference where it's kicking off between Zelensky and Trump, do you really think Keir Starmer's going to jump in there and go, oh, sorry, Mr. President, I'm going to stop you right there? I don't think that's going to happen, because look what happens when you go against Donald Trump. He'll slap on a tariff onto you and he'll tell you where to go, won't he?
Well, that's why it's important that it's not just Sir Keir Starmer, that there is the President of France, the Chancellor from Germany, Prime Minister from Italy, the head of NATO. So there is a strong group of Western leaders who I'm sure will have concerted their position before going into this meeting, and they will make clear that they stand behind President Zelensky and the people of Ukraine. And that, I think, will be a powerful influence on President Trump. He didn't come out with a specific deal from the meeting in Alaska. We know some of what appears to have taken place, but by no means all of it. I think there is still everything to play for. And essentially, having changed his mind on previous occasions, I would assume that the Western leaders will try and get him back to where he was before, a ceasefire, some sort of discussion about what eventually might result, but making sure that the people of Ukraine are protected and secure in their own borders.
And what could this mean for British armed forces? Starmer and other European leaders have suggested that European troops could be involved in keeping the peace, in offering those security guarantees. And yet, certainly since your time as Defence Secretary, British troop numbers have shrunk considerably. Do we really have the force and the resource to offer the kind of guarantee that Ukraine would need?
Well, I've never, ever resisted the idea that we should spend more on defence. That was true when I was Defence Secretary. It's even more true today after the very serious cutbacks we saw under the last government. So certainly all European nations need to be spending a higher percentage of their GDP. We need to have the resources, as your colleague indicated earlier. We need to make sure that any promises we made to Ukraine, we can deliver. Otherwise, I accept that we're simply making hollow promises to a president in Ukraine who's under a great deal of pressure. So we've got to stand by those security guarantees. We've got to have the resources, the weaponry, the equipment that will be required if we are to put British forces on the ground. Because after all, ultimately, we need to protect those forces from any threats that Russia might pose.
Thank you so much there. Former Defence Secretary Jeff Hoon, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
I honestly don't buy. Paul here says strong group of Western leaders is a laughable comment in itself. I totally agree. And talking of that, Delulu, Skibbity and Shadow Wipe is coming up next at the latest
See what
editions.
you did there, Alex.
Yeah. We'll see you very shortly.
GB News, we are proud to stand for you, for the Britain you love, for the communities you live in. That's what makes us the fearless champions of Britain. Its voices and its values. Because we, at GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Britain's News with me, Alex Armstrong and Miriam Cates.
Well, joining us in the studio, we have broadcaster and journalist Claire Muldoon and former Labour advisor Matthew Talbot to discuss the papers. Now, we've been trailing this all morning, these, what I consider made-up words, skibbity something, something else. But tradwife, this is an interesting one. This is now in the Cambridge Dictionary. What is a tradwife, Matthew?
Tradwife is a traditional, short for a traditional wife, married woman who stays at home cooking, cleaning and all the rest of it. And I think part of this, I first became aware of it through sort of TikTok, and it seemed to be sort of imported from America, and there seemed to be sort of a pushback against the stem of what are we now, fourth wave feminism, fifth wave feminism?
I've lost count.
Of you know, people, American women wanting to sort of stick to traditional gender roles and be the at-home traditional wife whilst the man goes out to work. And there seems to be some tide of popularity for it.
Do you know where it's coming from? I was reading into this because I've got younger brothers who are about 10, 13 years younger.
I thought you were going to say that you've got a tradwife there.
A bit of a shocker, yeah. A bit of a shocker for everybody. We got married over the next last week. But yeah, it's a noticeable change in this Gen Alpha, this youngest generation of young people. So the sort of very young teenagers who are using these terms. And it seems to me that even though they're not old enough really to consider what this all means for them, they're rejecting the current consensus around how the household should be, including young girls.
Yeah, and I get that. And traditionally, it used to be quite a pejorative term. Oh, you're a housewife. Oh, well, you're not up to much. And long ago, it was the housewives, if you were having a dinner party, that actually had the time to tease out the detail in the news stories. It was them that were able to bring the conversations around, have the discussion, put in the humour, put in anything else, plus provide the home with warmth, sincerity, value, kindness and resilience. You know, it's a difficult job.
We've been telling girls for so long that, you know, you can have it all.
You can.
And it's not true.
I'm sorry.
You can't have it all at the same time, certainly.
No, exactly. But your time will come, and you should not diminish, and you should never think that your role within the home, whether that be a stay-at-home father, because we know they exist, but whether or not, you should never, ever undermine the importance of someone being in the house for that child returning from school to make sure they're not a latchkey kid. And it is all about identity. Kids now have got so many choices now of what they think they can be, of what they want to be. Very little, actually, of what they can be, and that's the difference.
But do you think, then, Matthew, that the idea of the tradwife, or certainly the Instagram tradwife, is a little bit idealised? I mean, I've seen some of the videos of these beautiful young women, you know, dressed perfectly, in floral dresses, you know, baking in one hand, neatly dressed toddler on there. I mean, it doesn't work like that in real life. You know, your house is a tip, there's food everywhere. You know, this is...
Unless you're Meghan Markle, of course. I mean, yeah, as ever.
I think she has help, Alex.
Oh, I'm sure she does. But they do parade themselves like that, don't they?
But it's the problem with social media is that we're idealising even this, which should be an interesting trend, but actually it just becomes another thing for women to live up to.
But possibly, yes, there is the negative aspect to that. I think ultimately people people to do what they want, and they shouldn't be judged otherwise. If that's what you think is the best for you and your family, then go for it. But there is obviously an idealisation around it. And ultimately, we have to question not just the fact that women are free to go into the workplace after many years of sort of suffrage and whatever else. It's most people can't afford to have one person at home. Both parents go to work, and we have to question the impact that then has potentially on children of parents not being around because they're working all hours God sent.
Yeah, I think that the extension of society, and I think that does extend it, because if I look back at my mother's generation, where her mother was a stay-at-home wife, that was just the norm then. But there was a great sense of community. My gran would go to a steamie to wash the clothes. She then knew which one of the neighbours needed help. She knew which one of the neighbours, husband wasn't a good husband. She knew which kid was wrong. She knew if the family needed something. And then the collective would come together with food through acts of charity, although we name it that there. Yeah. That is exactly what it is. Totally. And I think we need to get that back.
Yeah. Well, it all went wrong at the Industrial Revolution because before...
Oh, well, we're going back.
We're going back now, aren't we?
Women were economically active, but the centre of economic activity was the home.
Yes.
And therefore, it was completely compatible with raising children. When work moved to factories, you suddenly got this problem of you're going to have to separate women from their children if they're going to be economically active. It's possible that working from home now, that's possible with technology, is actually a benefit for some women that you could perhaps...
And that's why it was called pin money.
Yeah.
For women working, because they could then pin it to their pennies, put it in their pennies. That's why. And it's such an essential thing, I think, for women to be emboldened.
Yes.
But you think of a housewife, it's not just a housewife. They are nurses, they're doctors, they are taking care of everything in the home. Their budgets, it's a great skill. And it's often a very, very much an overlooked skill.
Matthew, I want to move on now to a different topic because we've got this another bonkers story here. And listen, I'm so fed up of seeing all these things. It's basically the police saying, again, here's how you stop shoplifters. Retail staff are told to meet and greet customers to cut shoplifting.
Meet and greet.
Listen, part of this will work, part of it won't. And the difference is sort of the changes in society. Listen, I was a rogue many years ago and may have gone into, newsagents as a kid and allegedly, as some may say, Now, I might have put chocolate bars in my pockets as a teenager if I thought I could get away with it. Now, if the newsagent was stood there and said good morning to me, I might have thought something else of it.
Yeah,
the problem is there's a sense of shamelessness in the fact that we have seen countless videos of people striding in with bags, throwing it in. They don't care who's around and what people have got to say. That's the difference where I think this behavioural psychology won't necessarily have the impact.
So I think you're right when it comes to people who might just give it a go, but the hardcore shoplifters, the people we're seeing sort of almost doing this for a living, these like full-time shoplifters you see every day if you're on Regent Street or Oxford Street, Claire, it's not going to stop them at all, is it? They don't care if there's someone at the door. They don't even care if there's security there.
Let's be honest, in some parts of the country, they're going to have to be standing there for 5 minutes, greeting people in different languages, saying hello. It's going to be really difficult. But my view is, categorically, this is increasing due to the number of self-service checkouts. We need to get back to people putting their shopping up on a belt, getting it scanned through, having a social interaction with someone, scanning it all up, and then packing your bag and then leaving. But if we had more of that, then we'd have less of this. £200 is a threshold that people can actually take. Now, take. But where's that cost being passed on to?
This is what they did in LA.
Don't kid me on. They're being passed on to us.
Yeah, you're absolutely
We're paying
right.
For it.
And this happened. I lived in Los Angeles for a little while, and it was bedlam. And everything was behind Perspex boxes, even the milk. I mean, I saw pictures the other day of tags being put on milk. Tags in the United Kingdom. That's how bad this is getting. It's totally nuts.
Well, when I was an MP, I visited a couple of supermarkets where they were having problems with shoplifting. And one of the problems was that the supermarket, the companies, it was now their policy not to allow their store staff to tackle shoplifters in any way because they didn't want any, health and safety complaints.
I worked at one of the biggest supermarkets in the country when I was about 19, so we're going back now. And there was always a policy of if someone leaves with something, don't chase them, you don't know what they've got on them or whatever else. And I thought, well, it's wrong. There's that bit in you that wants to do something. They said no. I think the difference with this as well is there's a lot more organised crime behind it. Back, when I was a lad, you'd have one fella on the estate who'd go and nick the lamb and he'd be selling it at cut price to make himself a few quid. Now, there's a lot more people doing it, it's a lot more organised.
Well, thank you, Matthew and Claire. Before we go, I was mentioning how trad wives don't really look as brilliant as they do on Instagram. This, I would like to show you, is what stay-at-home mums really look like. I was a stay-at-home mum for 10 years, and I can tell you, when you're baking, looking after children, it's great fun.
I don't know what
but
you're
it's
talking about.
not
Glamorous
pretty.
as ever, Miriam. What are you talking about?
I think a bag of flour fell out of the cupboard from memory. It was quite a long time ago. There you go.
That's lovely.
Don't have to look perfect.
No, you definitely don't. But anyway, listen, Claire, Matthew, thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you again very soon. But here is your 60-second news update with Sophia Hill.
Very good morning. These are the latest headlines just after 11:30. Sir Keir Starmer is in Washington today with European leaders urging President Trump not to bow to Vladimir Putin's demands in peace talks. It comes after Russian attacks overnight killed 3 and injured 18 in Kharkiv. 8 pubs a week shut for good in the first half of this year. Figures show that 209 pubs were demolished or converted by June as rising taxes, higher wages and business rates hit the industry hard. Chancellor Rachel Reeves is preparing to roll back environmental protections to speed up infrastructure projects. She insists that these changes are vital and continues her criticism of bats and newts as economic obstacles. The average asking price for a home has dropped by more than £10,000 this summer. That's according to Rightmove. Prices fell nearly £5,000 in August alone, bringing the average to just shy of £379,000. And more than 6,000 new words have been added to the Cambridge Dictionary, including slang like skibbity, delulu and tradwife. Editors say that social media is driving much of the new changes. Those are the headlines for now. More news at the top of the hour.
For all the latest from GB News whilst you're on the go, get the GB News app. Scan the QR code now to download or visit gbnews.com/app.
Yeah, viewers are loving that picture of
Oh,
you,
no.
Miriam, by the way. They're loving that photo of you. Do you have a trad wife? Maybe that's the next thing we should ask people to send. We've got loads of your pictures coming in. Lots of your stuff from flags, by the way. We love the flag images coming through. Please keep sending them. But coming up, Good Afternoon Britain with Tom and Emily's coming up from 12 o'clock. What have you got coming up on the show?
It's a show full of skibbity riz.
Down with the kids stuff.
I feel very old.
This is going to get clipped up by some of those young people going, what are they doing?
But you're the one with teenage children, aren't you, Miriam?
Absolutely.
So you should know all these
I
words.
was saying earlier that sometimes they put things in text messages to me and I actually have to Google what the text
Why are you being...
So they don't temper their language for you.
Sometimes Googling it actually doesn't really lead you in any direction at all. Because, I mean, for example, skibbity is just a nonsense word for emphasis. It doesn't actually mean anything. But there are all...
Like righto, as
Have you heard of the 6-7 thing?
What's that? I haven't seen this one. Is this a new thing?
Just every now and again, a Generation Alpha person will go 6-7.
What does that mean, Tom?
For no reason.
OK, but it's a Gen Alpha thing, is it? Because I've been saying this all day. It's definitely a Gen Alpha thing. Are they just becoming more conservative or just weird?
Hang on, the Gen Alpha, they're the ones even younger than the Gen
after
Z.
Zoomers.
Yeah.
So how old are they?
I think what, they're young teenagers?
After 2005, I think.
Yeah,
so
young
they're all
teenagers.
sort of, yeah.
OK, so 20 and younger.
Basically.
Right, OK, well, I've got to keep track of this. 6,000 new terms in 1 year. That's a bit
I
much.
wonder what your kid's going to be talking like. You know, they'll be
God knows.
Generation Beta, probably.
Yeah.
They're going to be talking very properly. Of course, Alex. Of course, we're going to be gearing up to this big showdown in the White House and lots more to come.
All right.
Well, we look forward to seeing you at 12. But up next on Britain's Newsroom, nearly half of consumers say they've experienced poor customer service in the past year. We're watching Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
6.
Hello, yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. For many, a fine, bright day out there with quite a bit of sunshine around, but parts of the east staying fairly grey, and there are a few showers close to this area of low pressure across the southwest of England, Somerset, Devon, Cornwall, perhaps parts of South Wales also may catch a shower here. Also quite hazy the skies here, thanks to smoke and Saharan dust blown up from the south. A lot of low clouds coming into parts of eastern England at times, melting away somewhat through the day, but parts of the east coast may stay a little glum. For many, though, it's dry, it's fine. Got some sunny spells and temperatures getting into the mid-20s with some sunshine over southeast Wales towards Bristol as well. Cooler, though, on these North Sea coasts where it may stay pretty grey. Quite a lot of cloud across the Northern Isles as well. Might even produce the odd little bit of drizzle. And around the coast of eastern Scotland, staying fairly glum and chilly. But much of western and central Scotland, dry, fine and sunny. A fine evening across Northern Ireland. Much of northern England, although again to the east of the Pennines, could stay fairly cloudy. Further south, hazy sunshine. I don't think we'll see too many showers through the evening across the southwest, but we may well see one or two coming back as we go through the night across the far southwest of England and again South Wales. Might even hear the odd rumble of thunder today and tonight in the showers too, but say most places won't see them. Many areas staying dry. The mist and low cloud will come back in overnight. Could get down to single figures in rural parts of Scotland, but mostly we're staying in the low teens in towns and cities. Similar story tomorrow. A grey morning across these eastern areas, staying pretty glum along some of the coasts. Maybe the odd little bit of drizzle. Again, southwest England, parts of South Wales could see one or two showers. Certainly quite a lot of cloud across Cornwall and Devon, with maybe some heavier showers likely here. Pretty chilly on those North Sea coasts, but in the sunny spells, temperatures again into the 20s.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Well, some breaking news just coming into us now. Vladimir Zelensky has taken to Twitter to condemn today's strikes ahead of those crunch talks later on.
GB News Home and Security Editor Mark White is joining us to inform us about all the latest happenings. Mark.
Well, we've heard from President Vladimir Zelensky, which I think is important because we really haven't heard anything prior to the talks in any detail from him. So while, of course, condemning what has happened in terms of more missile and drone strikes from Russia, there's some key information in here about how he sees the talks going forward. So I think worth us reading out as we can bring you some of the pictures from Ukraine there. He has said this was a demonstrative and cynical Russian strike, talking about the strike on Zaporizhzhia. They are aware that a meeting is taking place today in Washington that will address the end of the war. We will have a discussion with President Trump about key issues, along with Ukraine. The leaders of the United Kingdom, France, Germany, Italy, Finland, the European Union and NATO will participate in the conversation. He goes on to say, everyone seeks dignified peace and true security. And at this very moment, the Russians, he says, are attacking Kharkiv, Zaporizhzhia, the Sumy region and Odessa, destroying residential buildings and our civilian infrastructure. Russians are deliberately killing people, he says, particularly children. As of now, 7 people have been killed as a result of the drone strike in Kharkiv, the youngest being a girl who is only a year and a half old, and dozens have been injured, including children. In Zaporizhzhia, he says, missile strikes injured 20 people and killed 3. My condolences go out to all of those victims' families and loved ones. And he also says there was a deliberate Russian strike on an energy facility in Odessa, that's the port city, owned by an Azerbaijani company, implying that it was an attack not only on us, but also on our relations and energy security. The Russian war machine, he says, continues to destroy lives despite everything Putin will commit. Destructive, demonstrative killings to maintain pressure on Ukraine and Europe, as well as to humiliate diplomatic efforts. That is precisely why we're seeking assistance to put an end to the killings. That is why reliable security guarantees are required. And that is why Russia should not be rewarded for its participation in this war. The war must be ended, and it's Moscow that must hear the word stop. So, of course, the condemnation that you get from President Zelensky to these latest strikes that have had quite a heavy toll on the civilian population. But important, I think, in looking forward to the talks, he's talking about the absolute need for Ukraine to get these guarantees, these security guarantees that we have now heard President Trump be more direct on, and you know, we've heard, of course, from Steve Witkoff, his special envoy, saying that Russia appears to be accepting that there will be, that they would accept the need for security guarantees, perhaps a NATO Article 5 style guarantee that an attack on one is an attack on all, to help protect Ukraine going forward. And he's also saying there that he doesn't want to see Russia rewarded in this war. Well, clearly, if Russia is given vast tracts of land in Ukraine, that will be seen as a very significant reward, I think, for Russia.
Mark, we just heard that Russia has said they are discussing a civilian stop of 31 people with Ukraine. Obviously, this news comes on the back of Zelensky's remarks there. Do you think that actually, perhaps maybe the way that we should be interpreting this, and I've noticed that Zelensky has written this in English first, perhaps it's a bit of a ploy to the international community to go, look, I mean, he's written it in Ukrainian, the same thing, second in a post underneath. So the priority here is communication, right? And it seems that there might even be some collaboration with the Russians on this swap of 31 civilians. So what do we make of that? How do we pull away from the spin versus what actually is the core of the message here?
Well, we've seen prisoner swaps in the past, so of course any time that happens, it's got to be welcome. But what we're getting from President Zelensky here is clearly him trying to galvanise the international community behind Ukraine by showing them once again the reality of what's happening on the ground, which are strikes every day from Russia that on some days can really exact a very heavy toll in terms of those killed and injured within the civilian population.
Mark White, thank you very much for joining us.
Yes, and we'll be bringing you everything up to date on Ukraine throughout the day. Well, still to come, you've been sending us photos of your British flags flying high. We'll be running through those next up, but you're watching Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Beth.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie's here.
I'm Michelle Duke, Britain's News Channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection. Tune in to GB News, anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's News Channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world, but look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m.
only on GB News.
You've read the headlines, you've heard what those in power have to say. How about now we actually get to the truth?
They would pay attention.
We go beyond the political theatre and tell you what's really going on behind the scenes. For a massive council tax hike, one of the biggest in the UK. Others follow their lines, but we go off script.
You sound like a broken record. You say that week after week.
Cutting through the narratives and giving you unique perspectives. That's Ben Leo tonight, Saturdays and Sundays from 9 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
isn't it?
no,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Okoye, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom. Well, sad news, over 200 pubs have closed their doors for good across the United Kingdom in the first half of this year because of tax rises and labour costs.
Well, joining us now is the Chair of Judges for the Great British Pub Awards, Ed Beddington. Ed, good morning. Very sad news. More and more pubs are closing. This isn't really a recent development, isn't it? This has been happening for a number of years now.
It's a trend that's been taking place for, a number of years. I think COVID, we saw acceleration then, but it has been tracked for some time. But it does seem to be picking up the pace at the moment. To have more than 200 pubs close in the first 6 months of the year is a worrying sign that may accelerate further.
Yeah, Ed, what is causing really the rise in pubs closing? Is it tax? Is it cultural change? Is there just less people drinking? Is it inflation, or is it a mixture of all those things?
It's mostly tax. If we're blatantly obvious about it, it is a problem. Pubs are heavily taxed, more tax than many other businesses. Over £1 in £3 across the bar goes to the tax man. The recent budget changes have increased costs on businesses. We saw business rate relief slashed. We've seen the national insurers' contribution, the employers' contribution increase, and the minimum wage rise. So all of those things have had a knock-on effect. And it's really been the final nail in the coffin for many operators.
What about the punters? Have drinking habits changed at all? I remember visiting some pubs shortly after COVID, and the publicans were saying that people have just reduced their drinking hours. They're not staying as late anymore. They're perhaps not coming after work every day. Has that been a factor as well?
It is part of the issue. There are cultural changes. Consumer habits have changed since COVID, but people are still going out. People are still visiting the pub. They may be spending a little less, but the footfall is holding up. The problem is that the increase in costs mean that it doesn't matter how many people visit the pub, it's not falling through to the bottom line because it's still too expensive to operate.
All right, well, as Ed Beddington there, Chair of Judges for the Great British Pub Awards. Ed, thank you very much for joining us. I hope we can save the pubs. I really do. I love the pub. It's a British tradition, isn't it?
Yeah, have you seen the latest Clarkson's Farm series? And I haven't finished yet, don't tell me what happens. Okay. But at one point, he's trying to buy a pub and there were just so many for sale.
I know, it's crazy, isn't it?
Anyway, we've been asking you to send in your pictures of flags all the way through the programme. We showed you one from Grumpy Grandad earlier. His 2 Union Jack flags, look at that, flying magnificently on his home.
And Richard also sent us this, saying, here is my flag flying high and flying proud.
Ed's flag, I love that.
Love that.
And then Lisa from Swansea has sent us Union Jack and Welsh flag. That's
brilliant.
Good. That's good unionist flag flying there.
Yeah, and Trev and Tanya from Somerset have sent us these 3 flags, including the flag of Somerset. Love it, it's beautiful.
Brilliant. Bryden is proudly flying the Union Jack. And the flag of St George there. Look at that. I think we're starting a trend here, Alex, on GB News.
Do you know what? I think we should keep this going.
I do.
Keep sending us your flag. This is like I think people are calling this what, Operation Flying Colours.
Absolutely.
I love that.
Well,
That's
we're back
great.
tomorrow, you and I. So
Yeah.
I think we'd like some more flags, please. We'll be showing lots more. Show us your flagpoles, etc.
That's it. And loads more. Look, big day in for news today as well. So stay tuned because obviously Tom and Emily will be joining us very shortly with a big story. We've got all the stuff coming up from Ukraine, of course, as well. Tom and Emily, what have you got for us?
Yes, no doubt, as we're building up, the Prime Minister is, of course, somewhere over the mid-Atlantic as he's preparing to meet with Donald Trump a little bit later in the White House. But closer to home, well, of course, there have been those migrant protests over the weekend. We'll be speaking to a journalist who's been on the front line of those protests, those peaceful protests, specifically speaking about how many women are coming forward to protest those migrant hotels.
And fantastic to see all of our viewers in their flags outside their homes. We're going to be asking why on earth the councils that have previously been happy to have Palestinian flags in their neighbourhood now tearing down the St George's flag and the Union flag as well. What is going on?
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. For many, a fine, bright day out there with quite a bit of sunshine around, but parts of the east staying fairly grey, and there are a few showers close to this area of low pressure across the southwest of England, Somerset, Devon, Cornwall, perhaps parts of South Wales also may catch a shower here. Also quite hazy skies here thanks to smoke and Saharan dust blown up from the south. A lot of low clouds coming into parts of eastern England at times, melting away somewhat through the day, but parts of the east coast may stay a little glum. For many, though, it's dry, it's fine. Got some sunny spells and temperatures getting into the mid-20s with some sunshine over southeast Wales towards Bristol as well. Cooler, though, on these North Sea coasts where it may stay pretty grey. Quite a lot of cloud across the Northern Isles as well. Might even produce the odd little bit of drizzle. And around the coast of eastern Scotland, staying fairly glum and chilly. But much of western central Scotland dry, fine and sunny. A fine evening across Northern Ireland. Much of northern England, although again to the east of the Pennines could stay fairly cloudy. Further south, hazy sunshine. I don't think we'll see too many showers through the evening across the southwest, but we may well see one or two coming back as we go through the night across the far southwest of England and again South Wales. Might even hear the odd rumble of thunder today and tonight in these showers too, but say most places won't see them. Many areas staying dry. The mist and low cloud will come back in overnight. Could get down to single figures in rural parts of Scotland, but mostly we're staying in the low teens in towns and cities. Similar story tomorrow. A grey morning across these eastern areas, staying pretty glum along some of the coasts. Maybe the odd little bit of drizzle. Again, southwest England, parts of South Wales could see one or two showers. Certainly quite a lot of cloud across Cornwall and Devon, with maybe some heavier showers likely here. Pretty chilly on those